Victor, the Darby Pearl, Bob's nephew is involved in that. Yeah, and they're just a total.
I'll track down this geezer's bragging, whether it's made or not. Soul Park, St. Paul. What time is it? 6:30. No, they start like at 8, 9 o'clock. Seven,
7:10, 7:15.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
Are we ready?
Run a tight meeting there, Will.
I got 6:30. You got 6:30. Good evening. The Port Hueneme City Council meeting of January 16th. It's ready to get started, so we'd like to have the call to order and flag salute. Jim Hensley, would you please lead us in the flag salute? Tonight's inspiration is Councilmember John Sharkey.
Yesterday, of course, was the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And over in the city of Oxnard, they had, I believe it was the 34th annual commemoration of that event. And at times like that, those of us who are old enough, think back to the days of Dr. King in the 60s and the movement of that time and consider the troubles in our own time and compare them to that time. Such times call for action, and Dr. King was a man of action. And there's one quote that I was thinking of, and he says, "In the end, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." So when we are confronted with injustice, let us not be silent. Let us do what we can to bend that arc of history, though it be long, towards justice, as Dr. King advised. And with that, I wish you good evening.
Thank you, Councilman Sharkey. It's time for the roll call now, please.
Councilmember Fick?
Here.
Councilmember Hensley?
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Here.
Mayor Schnapp?
Mayor Schnapp is temporarily not here, obviously, but she will be here shortly. Thank you. The agenda, if we have a approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have an amendment and approval in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we did have a closed session, so any reportable actions?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There are no reportable actions. However, I've been asked to suggest that if there are interested parties on item 4B having to do with Pleasant Valley lots, that they are requested to go to the lobby where Mr. Kinney will be available for Whatever Mr. Kenny wishes.
Thank you. It's now time for open forum. This is your opportunity to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. And we do have some speaker cards, so please, if you do have something you want to address the council about, not on the agenda, please fill out a card and give it to our clerk here, and we'll get it going. First one we have here is Kevin Brannon. Good to see you again, Kevin.
Hello, it's good to be seen. Hello. What's up, city council members? Excuse my attire, I'm straight from the gym, so didn't get all fancied up. But I just wanted to give you guys an update on the Road Guppy Outdoor Program. You guys had me here, I don't know how many months ago it was, and I was presented with the award, thanks to Mr. Gama here. So I just wanted to give you guys an update from 2017 real quick, and then also tell you what we're doing 2017, and tell you what we're doing in 2018. I think I sent some of you guys the video, I think Sharky, quick little 3-minute video to show you what we did. So we did over 300 kids last year. That takes us over 800 kids now in the 5 years we've been doing it. We've partnered up with some other programs like Foster VC, we're Business with a Heart with them, United Parents, City Center in Ventura, Boys and Girls Scouts, so partnered up. Let's see. This year we're going to do more in Port Hueneme and South Oxnard where we wanted to do it. Ventura Pier has kind of a different ecosystem, so we catch a lot more species, you know, compared to when we used to do them at Hueneme, but we need it to keep it here because the transportation issue to get kids up there is an issue. With that being said, we want to get back into the classroom over at the community center there at the library and do that the fourth Monday. All of our programs are always set up for the fourth Saturday or Sunday. This year we're going to mix it up from Saturdays and Sundays because we missed some kids last year doing all Saturdays due to sports. So this time we're going to do some Sundays so that way more kids can show up. And then have it open that the kids can check the gear out. Or if they want to stay after we leave at 11 o'clock, that they could keep the gear and then return it back to us. And then if they show interest in the program, we're getting so many donations now that we could actually start giving it to the kids. But, you know, we got to make sure we keep enough that we could still have enough for kids that show up. But then, again, as they're showing interest, that they could start giving them gear. And again, and if they want to check stuff out on a different day that's just not the days that we're doing it, again, the kids in this area can, you know, check it in and check it out. So those are some things we're working on for this year. We are doing one on the 28th right here at Hueneme Pier from 8 to 11 o'clock and send you guys an invitation if you guys want to come see what we're doing firsthand. Again, it's fishing, educational, hands-on, hoop nets, stuff like that. And you don't have to be there the whole time. Anybody could come. We're getting a lot of shares. You know, they're sharing us with the city of the Port Hueneme and the news and stuff like that. So we're getting a lot of support, doing TV interviews and stuff on local television. So it's really starting to grow. It's starting to grow into more of a family activity as well. People are showing up with their family and making that part of their weekend activities. Let's see. Our goal this year is to get to ICAST in July. ICAST is, the fishing industry is huge and you try to get your sponsorships. We're trying to get the program more sponsored by the industry type to, you know, show them what we're doing so that way we're not looking for, you know, little, you know, club donations and stuff that we could kind of get funded by industry like Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's and stuff like that. So getting funding up to go to that in Orlando. And again, we're just out here catching memories and hope to see you guys on the 28th. If you have any questions? That was good.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you. Next is Johnny Adamson, please. Port Hueneme Museum. What's going on at the museum these days, Johnny?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to inform you that we're going to now be open on Wednesdays, and it'll be from 9 to 3. We're open every day at the museum except for Mondays. So every day will be from 9 to 3, and on Sundays we'll be open from 12 to 3, but every other day it's 9 to 3 except for the Mondays. And that's because we're expanding some of our programs. Some of the things I wanted to let you know, upcoming things that we have is that every first Sunday of the month we have our rock painting classes. So if anybody likes to paint rocks, okay, and they're more than welcome to come in and sign up. You have to sign up with Miss Amy Brewer because we limit the classes to 25 just because of our seating capacity. Also on the second Sunday, we have Amy Brewer's beach class classes. So anybody who's interested in beach glass, please come out and see what it's like. You can bring your own glass. We do make a small charge of $5, and that's for the glass we provide and some of the chains we provide. If you want an extra chain, it's only $1. So, but it's really interesting to come and see what other people do in making those glass glasses. A new item we have is going to be on the third Sunday is going to be knot tying classes. So if you ever wanted to learn how to make a Swiss seat or something, you know, come out and see us. And we have a really good gentleman, nice gentleman there who takes his time and he'll go over it with you. And it's not a pressure class or anything, but it is kind of an informative class. Some of these knots you use every day, and some of the classes the knots you can use for other purposes that you might come along in your life, career, whatever. On the fourth Sunday, we have scrapbook classes. This is where people come in and we have a theme, and people will bring in pieces of pictures and things for the agenda of that type thing. So that's just what I wanted to let you know. Also, November 11th is going to be our third annual Veterans Day celebration, and it's going to be at the City Hall at 8:30 a.m. This is the third time that the city has ever had a memorial or a Veterans Day celebration. Kind of odd that we live right here next to the Navy base, and this is the third time we've had a Memorial Day. So, and that's about it.
Any questions, comments? I have one. Is
Yes, sir.
the museum's schedule, hours, et cetera, on our website at the city?
I have some flyers here in the back. It should be on the website. There was a correction we did have to make. I noted that some of the hours were not correct, so I have addressed that issue, and hopefully that'll be
So it is now.
straightened out. Yes, sir.
Great.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, before you depart,
Yes.
we were thinking and talking, discussing street signs, so people, when they come into the area on main drives, have a recognition of what is it. Has there been any progress in getting these signs?
Unknown. I know it's in some kind of a progress stage, but I'm not sure exactly where it's at in that stage. So I'll have to confer with the higher-ups to speak.
I'd like
So.
to see it before summer when people start coming in and they get directed, because you guys are.
I'll address that to Larry.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Johnny, did you
Yes,
have
sir.
another topic you wanted to address the council on? I've got
Yes, sir, I
another
did.
speaker's card here, so why don't
sir.
you go ahead and start
Okay.
again?
Okay, sir, this is, I'm a private citizen now, I'm not anybody, okay. I want to address the issue of the recreational marijuana, not medical marijuana, the recreational marijuana. Last city council meeting, I know there's some flags raised by the police department requesting 3 new positions. If that is making an impact on our neighborhood, if the marijuana is making that much of an impact on our neighborhood, then I think there should be some red flags. Somebody should say, hey, what's going on for this? Also, with recreational marijuana, how are you going to keep it out of the kids' hands? I mean, you can't even keep alcohol out of the kids' hands. So if you legalize recreational marijuana, how are you going to keep the kids from getting a hold of it? You know, I'm just saying that's just some of the concerns I see. You know, that's just my concern. And I think we ought to take a double back step and say, hey, if the police chief raised some flags about this marijuana issue, requiring 3 more officers to be hired, just because of that one issue, I think we ought to take another look. And that's just my opinion, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next is Tom King. No problem, I read it, it's fine.
You did great. I'm here on an issue that was spoken of before. I'm at 285 Whitecap, which is Anacapa View Beach Homes. This has to do with the proposed building, tower, 10 to 12-story complex. And I just want to say, as I said the last meeting, certainly appreciate the service and selflessness of the city council, staff, see the police department here. But I'm here just to represent the fact that there are numerous people and a growing number of people that are absolutely against this project, but certainly for the city of Port Hueneme, for the opportunity to raise more money. We're simply against the location of the proposed site, and particularly as well the parking site as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia Hessel.
Hi, I'm not sure if this really falls under your realm, but it's a concern of my families and my neighborhoods. We've been seeing a lot more traffic on our street that's faster and a lot of big trucks. And we're in a residential area, and I was just curious if the city ever considers putting speed bumps in some of these more trafficked areas. I mean, we have a lot of families with young children, and I try not to let mine go in the street, but I just think it would be beneficial to our neighborhood, especially, I don't know if that's...
Olivia, before you leave, why don't you connect with Don Villafana, who's raising his hand back there. He's our Public Works Director and City Engineer, and he's working on a variety of options. We've had similar concerns in other neighborhoods, but it'll be helpful for him to know exactly where you live and some of the exact concerns, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, Don, is that it?
Don, yeah, Don Villafana.
Right on, thank you.
He'll stand up when you walk over in that direction.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Olivia. Mike Hamrick. There he is.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Wilberg, the rest of the City Council, City Manager, Mr. Green. I'm Mike Hamrick. I'm the current POA President of the Police Department. And I've taken over duties from Baltazar Tapia in reference to the association. He's been reassigned, so I stepped in as now the President, so I'll be addressing the Council from here on out. A little history on why I'm here. I think that it's 2018. We've been about a year and a half without a contract, as you guys well know. So as I was jotting down some ideas, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself personally. I'm a 25-year veteran of law enforcement. I worked at a large agency for 20 years. I've been here almost 6 years. Actually 6 years, 19 and a half at the former agency. I've been part of half of my career, I've been assigned or voted in as a union representative for the police departments. And there's a lot of things that I'm passionate about. The four main things are my faith, my family, my career, and football. So I'm going to speak to you guys on behalf of kind of my football knowledge, and I may run out of some time, so I've asked them for some more time because I'm speaking passionately from my heart. I didn't write anything down. I started to write some things down and threw that in the trash, and I thought that maybe you guys need to hear it from me this way. The men and women of the Port Hueneme Police Department have been working a lot, as you guys well know. There's 22 sworn positions, 2 of those being administrators that don't work the streets right now because of their duties, their collateral duties as being administrators. We're down 5. I heard rumors now it's 6 officers currently, and these are all issues as a 40-year veteran of being a football player and coach. That these are issues that I addressed our former coaches, our leaders of this city years ago that are no longer here. Some of them have since gone. But I addressed with them the morale issues that it creates when you've asked the police department that you haven't staffed properly and that you've consistently asked for help with and concessions. Over that 6-year period, you've created a situation in which was brought to the attention of a former city manager that as long as you keep working your players to a point that they can no longer perform, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have morale issues, and this is what's happened. This is the culmination of a lot of different things that's happened. I encourage all of you, in fact, I challenge all of you that we need to put some things aside. You made, in your invocation this evening, you talked about Dr. Martin Luther King, and I think that we need to come to the table. We need some resolution on what's going on because we're now in the 4th quarter of our situation with the city. we're close to the 2-minute warning, and you're going to force us to have to make some adjustments. And this isn't a threat from the association. I'm just saying that you're going to force us to make some adjustments, game time adjustments that are going to affect the city as a whole. 75% or more, based on your own survey that you've done, of the residents of the city appreciate the police department. We have a phenomenal response time to calls for service. We work very hard, and our players just want to be compensated for that. I don't know any other way to put it. They want to be compensated for their hard work. If they're compensated appropriately, others that are maybe dinged up will want to get back in the game. So this situation comes full circle. I've seen it as a player and as a coach. Too many of the coaches took bonuses, got new uniforms, got new equipment, and the rest of the players didn't. And where I come from, you feed your players first. Then the coaches sit back and eat. And so that's why I'm very passionate about this. I want to continue to work with all of you. I want to continue to work with Mr. Butler, Mr. Green, and we have, but I think it's time that we're into the fourth quarter now, and I think we need to really have some resolve and some resolution. I appreciate it. There's a few more board members that may want to speak, so thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. All right. Chris Taylor, did you want to say something? Thank you very much, then. Anybody else? Thank you very much, then. We are. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. Excuse me.
There's several other cards, but I'll try to make this brief. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city manager, city attorney. My name is Eric Starna. I am the vice president of our Port Hueneme Peace Officers Association, representing the 27 sworn and non-sworn members. I'm also up here urging the council to work with us in finalizing some sort of contract. We are having serious morale issues. We are working the streets with 3 officers for approximately 23,000 in our city, and that's not including what the numbers are in the base on a regular basis. We've given up money, we've given up positions, Social Security, Medicare, educational reimbursement, because we've been told the city's facing financial crisis. We understand that. We've seen others be compensated for taking on more responsibilities, yet you're asking us to do the same thing. We've been doing that for years. Dispatchers, patrol, our officers, and our detectives. In 2017 alone, these are approximate numbers, our officers were dispatched to 19,000 calls for service. I came from a large agency. This is my 3rd agency. I am proud to work here. I am passionate about the people that live in this city, and I know you guys are too. Our dispatchers work alone. They received in 2017 36,000 phone calls while manning the public window, 911 calls, non-emergency calls, and handling record duties. And if I told any member of this room right now, you cannot take a bathroom break until I am done speaking, I'm sure you guys would be upset too, but that's what they deal with in that door back there. Yes, we hired an auditor to help us resolve some of these issues. He has worked in cities of Chula Vista, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and I know you guys have read the paper, and with the city of Oxnard as well too. I'm sure we can come to an agreement on this. The community is part of this police department. The police department is part of the community. Please do not turn your backs on us. Do not turn your backs on the community. Let's come to a resolution and get this done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Then we will go to item number 7, which are presentations. And first one is National Brain Injury Awareness Month. Steve Gama.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Berg, City Council members and staff. Nearly a year ago, I started working for a company called Brain Injury Homes Incorporated, so I'm kind of new to this industry, and I've been involved and wanted to come tonight to talk about the National Brain Injury Awareness Month. In 2009, President Obama issued a proclamation officially designating March as Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness Month. That's a House Resolution 178. It expressed the need for enhanced public awareness of traumatic brain injuries and support for the designation of a National Brain Injury Awareness Month. You can notice I'm wearing green. The ribbon color is green, and The causes of traumatic brain injuries are a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or penetrating head injury that disrupts brain normal function. Ventura County statistics. In Ventura County, it's estimated there's about 16,000 traumatic brain injury survivors. Many stroke survivors develop what they call acquired brain injuries as well. This is undoubtedly responsible for a large society cost in the county at large. A reality check. Once the individual encounters a traumatic brain injury, the probability of a second or third injury increases significantly. In fact, many TBI survivors' need for treatment is necessitated by the second and third injury. So the first injury kind of sets you up, and then statistically you're more prone to a second and third injury. TBI injury management, prevention is the name of the game. Very difficult to prevent a traumatic brain injury. However, it is where we'd like to see cities and schools and county governments spend their time. After a brain injury, transition back to a normal life is a big challenge. Like I mentioned before, it's the second and third injury that often leads to the expense of a very expensive treatment. And then, of course, the most important thing after a TBI is to have a purposeful life, which becomes very difficult. The causes of traumatic brain injuries, as you can see by the pie graph, the most significant area is struck by or falls. So between falls and struck by, it's 47% of TBIs are caused by those. So typically you have a mild, moderate, severe. Like I said before, after your first traumatic brain injury, you're susceptible to a second and third, which most oftentimes necessitates the need for very expensive care and treatment down the road. Real quickly, my cousin, a month ago, tripped and fell in his garage and sustained a traumatic brain injury. And it kind of brought to home how devastating these can be to a family, and it's oftentimes it's by a trip or fall. I like to do this comparison. Super Lotto. How many play the lotto? When you play the lotto, do you expect to win? No, I don't think so. If you buy more tickets, does it increase your chance to win? Not really. But a TBI is kind of like the lottery in reverse. Millions of times across this nation, every day, people trip and fall. They trip over a cord, they trip over raised concrete. I think Mr. Hensley just tripped and fell and injured himself. And it's kind of like an inverse relationship with the Super Lotto, but every now and then somebody hits their head on the way down and they sustain a catastrophic injury, which is very expensive and leads to a life-altering event. So in the prevention stage of a traumatic brain injury, it's an inverse relationship to the Super Lotto example. And so point being is that if we could eliminate the hazards associated with trip and falls, you can minimize the probability of a traumatic brain injury. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Litigation and catastrophic injuries. So let's just say somebody wins the lotto in the trip and fall and they sustain a catastrophic injury. Mr. Green knows that when there is a catastrophic injury occurring on city grounds, you're going to get sued because there is a need for long care treatment. There's a need for a company like mine to provide the care to that person. So it behooves city governments, public agencies to really try and have a strong risk management program to prevent the catastrophic injury of a traumatic brain injury as a result of a trip and fall. So in the city of Port Hueneme, what can we do to prevent a catastrophic injury in the form of a traumatic brain injury? And like I showed you, 49% of causes are from slips, trips, falls, and struck by hazards. So we know that we have the coral tree issues where they break and fall. We know that we have concrete with rises and trip and fall. And we know that we have spikes on the pier that can cause trips and falls. And we know that we have buried rocks on the beach that can cause a trip and fall. Like I said before, most of the time people we trip, we fall, we laugh, nobody gets hurt. But there is a time where somebody is going to sustain a traumatic brain injury, and it's best risk management practice for the city to be able to demonstrate that we have a program to try and minimize trip and fall hazards throughout the city. And if I could urge you in recognizing National Brain Injury Awareness Month is to perhaps in the month of March focus on minimizing trip and fall hazards. And I think if we do that, that we could be a real good participant in National Brain Injury Awareness Month. And I will provide ribbons and posters, and I've been working on a draft resolution, and I might need a little help on that to deliver to you on March 5th. That's about it. Any questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Stephen. We also have, we want to recognize the week of January 21 through January 27, 2018 as School Choice Week in the city of Port Hueneme. For that, we have a proclamation for the school district. Unfortunately, we do not have a representative from the district with us tonight. However, I have been asked by them to go ahead and read the proclamation, and we will be presenting this to the city at a later date. It says here that a proclamation of the Port Hueneme City Council recognizing School Choice Week. Whereas all children in the city of Port Hueneme should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas City of Port Hueneme recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in the city of Port Hueneme to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of the city of Port Hueneme, and whereas the city of Port Hueneme is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home. And whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas the city of Port Hueneme has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children. And here's the final whereas. School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Sylvia Munoz-Schnapp, do hereby recognize January 21 through 27, 2018 as the City of Port Hueneme School Choice Week, and I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. So thank you very much for this. We now can move on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Approval and?
Second.
We have an approval and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next report, item number 9, Public Works Director. We have Steve Hickox talking to us today.
Thank you, Chair, members of council. I'm here tonight to provide you information and update on the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency's Groundwater Sustainability Plan. As you know, November 22nd, 2017, the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency posted on its website the 430-page preliminary plan for the groundwater sustainability. At its January 3rd, 2018 meeting, the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency opened up the 90-day comment period for this plan. They are looking for stakeholders to provide comments regarding the plan, even though the plan is not fully developed. They acknowledge that there's data gaps within the plan, and they also acknowledge that the consultant will be working simultaneously as we're reviewing the document to provide the information to fill that data gap. Tonight, I just wanted to bring to your attention some of the stakeholder or outreach programs that are available in case one of them or more provide an interest to you. The first item is Fox Canyon, in order to adopt this meeting or adopt this plan in July 2018, a meeting would have to be held and to adopt the ordinance by May 23rd, 2018. The interim plan baseline will be a period of 2003 to 2016. That baseline period will help identify what the allocation value will be for each pumper, and it will be based on the historical pumping during that baseline period. And that is equal to all pumpers in the basin. The split ratio between the pie or available water will be a 60-40 split between ag and M&I. And they also, the board is looking to have some flexibility built into the plan that was ultimately adopted this summer to allow for adjustments during wet periods or extended dry periods. There will be a stakeholder meeting planned for this Thursday at 6:30 at Rio Vista Middle School in Oxnard. That's open to the public. They are looking for stakeholders' comments on the preliminary draft so far. Stakeholders will have until February 28th, 2018 to provide the FCGMA board with options to implement into the plan. Some of the information that the board is seeking is still unidentified as far as how will they build the flexibility into the ratio split. There's options that stakeholders can provide comments and maybe even help provide information to implement into the plan. The executive committee will meet February 13th at the Ventura County Government Center. They will be discussing projects, new water sources, and funding opportunities for those projects in the future. The Oxnard Pleasant Valley Public Workshop is scheduled for February 8th. That meeting has been rescheduled. It's in the process right now of being identified what day that meeting will take place. This is a meeting where the Oxnard, Pleasant Valley, and M&I group could get together as a whole, about 45 people, to discuss the water allocations and the splits of the ratios between the ag and M&I groups. It is hopeful that that information will produce some plan or modifications to help build in that flexibility that the board's looking for. And then public comments should be based on the data that's currently available in the plan, not based on the data gaps. So the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency knows that they don't have a complete document, and they accept that. They're just looking for the public stakeholder comments to kind of make sure that they're smoothing the edges and that the information is getting out to all the stakeholders. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Questions?
Move to receive and file.
I'll second that.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions here. How heavily attended do you think some of these meetings will be, Steve?
Well, I think now they're going to start being more heavily attended. We've got information now that's put into the document. It's out on the website. It's people are reviewing it. They're receiving comments. So people are a lot more interested in voicing their concerns and working out the issues. Plus, too, the more that this information gets put out there and becomes developed, the closer we are to having an allocation program, which will affect everybody. So certainly the more that this information produces data and is implemented into the plan, then the more participation that will occur.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive this report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The report is received. We are now to police report, I believe. Okay. Let me go back to my schedule here.
So we're on item number 10? Item 10, okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we have a report from Chief Salinas.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff. I'm here just to make a quick report or presentation on our on the allocation of funds that you provided to the Port Hueneme Police Department on April 17th in the amount of $17,500 from the Community Benefit Fund in order for us to use those funds for disaster response and preparedness. So I'm here to provide you with a quick update. And so the money was to be used for 3 items. One was to pay for a Train the Trainer Listos program, which provides training to Spanish-speaking residents here in the city of Port Hueneme. And that program is underway and almost completed, where we'll have nearly over a dozen trainers that will graduate from that program here in the next month or so. The second part of that was to create a Citizen Core Council, which is underway, and we are getting that together. And then the last item was to create a disaster preparedness booklet. And the timing couldn't be better given the 2 disasters that we recently dealt with in our county. And so I'm here to present the council today with the first copies of Port Hueneme's 2018 disaster preparedness booklet. That was a result of the work of the Port Hueneme Police Department, as well as Laura Hernandez, who played an integral part of putting that booklet together. That booklet is also in a digital format, which will be posted online on our city's website. And we've also had 2,000 copies printed that will be made available to us here in the coming weeks. I know during a previous presentation, Mayor Schnapps asked about the Spanish version. We are completing that as we speak. There will be a Spanish version of what you see in front of you, and that will also be available to the public. That Spanish version is going to cost a few more dollars because we didn't put that into our original plan, so I'm sure the council will approve a few more dollars for us to produce the Spanish version of that here. And I'll come before council in the coming weeks, and I'm gathering that should cost anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 or more for us to produce a Spanish version. And if the council has any more questions that I can answer in regards to the booklet or our progress in the allocation of the money that you made.
Any questions?
Yes, if we
Councilmember
can, Madam
Hensley.
Mayor, perhaps we could agendize this item for the next issue to bring up so we can vote on the matter of the Spanish speaking? Or do you need that as part of an agendized item?
I'll come back with an exact cost and make a request for the exact amount and request that it be pulled or drawn from the Community Benefit Fund.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Chief. You know, we've all seen what happened, you know, in the area in the last month or so, and we know people that lost their homes in the fires, and some folks that even perished in the floods. Hit very close to home for some of us. On the lessons learned side, I mean, we don't often get that close a view of major disaster. Are there any takeaways, any lessons that we've learned? I know there were some issues with getting information out. There were language issues. There was what media do you use to reach people? There was the evacuation fatigue issue that happened. There was a lot of things that you think you plan for, but when it actually happens, you don't. You realize there are gaps. So, I mean, is there anything that, you know, off the top of your head that you think that maybe we learned, or things that we're going to have to, lessons we can apply here, I guess is the question.
So one of the biggest takeaways that I understand was the dissemination of information in Spanish to the public. So that's something that we'll definitely look at. Tomorrow I'm actually meeting with all the chiefs of police as well as the sheriff and district attorney, and we'll be going over some of the do's and don'ts, some of the pros and cons, some of what happened in these last 2 disasters and what we can improve should this happen again. Even though we're kind of detached here in the city of Port Hueneme, we still can face tsunamis, floods, as well as an attack on our local bases here. So hopefully this helps our community better prepare for those types of incidents.
Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Salinas, thanks so much. I really appreciate. I'm heartened that we can hopefully get some more of getting our staffing of the police department up to a standard level because we cut it back about 5 years ago. I understand that we, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have kind of a coordination problem with our radio or communication devices with other police agencies, or has that been corrected?
We still have some radio functionality issues that we're attempting to deal with.
How can we work those out, and how much is it going to cost?
That's something I can bring back before the council as an agendized report, give you more information on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Thank you for your report, Chief. I've been getting reports or comments from neighbors in the community regarding Channel Islands and Victoria intersection becoming more accident prone. And they were explaining how the lights are working, and people that mistakenly make left-hand turns are the ones who are ones who are put in most danger. Upcoming meeting, can we agendize that? I'd like to get a report on that intersection. Is that something that we can get?
Absolutely, and that's one of the most unique intersections we actually have in the county because it borders Oxnard, Port Hueneme, the Sheriff's Department, and then you have the Navy base on the other corner.
Right.
So I can get some statistics to
please.
see if there's information to support that and see what we can do, such as protected green arrows at that intersection.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Short.
Just give me a thing. Who owns the traffic lights there?
It would be following the jurisdiction of the Oxnard Police Department.
Yeah, so they coordinate with their stuff.
Yes.
When we have these bordering traffic lights and we've got the Ventura and Channel Islands, do we coordinate with them, or do they coordinate with us as far as timing the lights and that sort of thing?
Nothing I've had to deal with lately. I do know when we have minor traffic collisions, we don't generally argue over who takes it. It's whoever responds. It's generally the fatal traffic collisions that we fight over. Who is responsible?
But just in terms of the operating the traffic lights and the timing of the lights.
That would be something we would work with the City of Oxnard traffic engineer, and we can work with them.
Do we do that, or
I haven't done it since I've been here, but it's something that we can do.
Yeah, we should. Okay, thanks.
You know, I'm thinking, Chief, that as you're going to be meeting with the other police chiefs in Ventura County and probably doing best practices, what ifs, you know, reviewing some of the scenarios of the most current emergencies, could you incorporate some of that into your next presentation for us? Just saying these are the lessons that we learned overall, and these are some of the things that we might be implementing or looking forward to.
Absolutely, I can bring that information back.
Thank you. I'm really close to Santa Barbara as part of my job, and you know, my corporate side, corporate America, is about Santa Barbara, and so I'm very, very concerned about, you know, what happened, what didn't happen, communications that happened there, and et cetera. And a lot of people are just saying, what if, you know, these other things had happened ahead of time? Could we have saved some lives? So,
yes.
Yeah, looking forward to getting your information, then. Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? All right, thank you, Chief.
Real short comment. Law enforcement, public safety is absolutely critical to this community, particularly with our growth and development. We can't stand back and just become the little cow town and stay the way we are. We have to develop and we have to grow. Our police department is phenomenal from my viewpoint and many of my neighbor viewpoints. We need better staffing on it. We're starting to work on that. I really appreciate that. We have to take better care of our police department. And the second thought is the traffic. Lido and Channel Islands Boulevard is a real bear. I mean, we know it. And we're going to be working on that hopefully somehow or another. And I notice when I come down, particularly in the mornings, this way, I'm going at 40, 45 miles an hour, standard speed limit, and guys are past me, must be doing 60 and 70. They're in a big rush to get to the port or to work or whatever the case might be. So I don't know how we can quite enforce it without a motorcycle officer, but hopefully we can work something towards that effort also, okay? They're going to bring in practically all their own income anyway, so that's critical. We have to take care of our police department. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know what I saw out there on Lido, and this is a side thing, is that I saw a car being cut off because as somebody exited Lido and was turning right on Channel Islands, they thought they had the free right lane and they didn't. And so, you know, that was an accident that was thankfully avoided because a few of us scooted over, but it was just kind of cause for
Yes.
concern there sometimes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have item number 10, and this is a verbal report from Mr. Stewart, Community Development.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, staff. So this is a verbal report with regard to some upcoming code amendments that staff has basically been directed over time through suggestions and whatnot to begin work on. I know since I've come on board, I've been collecting comments and whatnot with regard to property maintenance, new issues as well as issues that were previously addressed but didn't come to fruition. We have a few state mandated codes that need to be updated, such as our what people call granny flats, but now are officially called accessory dwelling units. So those need to be upgraded as well. Our density bonus laws, but also just to make our code a little bit more user-friendly in terms of format, as well as some of our processes, particularly with the way that we have over the past interpreted, you know, what may require a major modification versus a minor modification, what really requires coastal commission work and review and whatnot. We also have the need for a few development standards to be looked at. For instance, if we do proceed with the hotel site, looking at our standards for the CS zone, which is our commercial special zone, which encompasses that one and only hotel site. So there are basically a bevy of code amendments that we are looking at this point. And so this evening, what I'm requesting is direction as to how we want to, or how you would like to approach this. We're not under really any time constraints at this point, so we can take as much time as we need to. Some of these items will be small and we can group a few together, but other ones, for instance, property maintenance, most likely it'll take at least one meeting, if not 2 or 3, just to go through that. So, but the main question is, do we want to set aside, say, an hour or so at each council meeting, or do we want to have special workshops or a combination to basically move forward, get the council and the community input, and then bring it all back once everybody's on the same page, basically, with the actual ordinances and code updates. So again, my question this evening is, what is your preference as far as special meetings, or if we just incorporate these into our regular scheduled council meetings? If we do want to have special workshops, then staff will go ahead and work with, I'll work with Mr. Butler and our city clerk to hopefully come up with some dates that we can bring back and discuss further.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Stewart? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Thank you. Tony, define property maintenance. What's that going to encompass?
For the most part, 2 items that have been brought up. The first was one that was, again, not officially put on the books, or really officially taken off for that matter, but that is what is allowed in front yard, basically.
Okay.
As well as, say, side yards that are visible from the street. And then the other item would deal with landscaping at this point, and what do we consider landscaping versus what's acceptable and what's not, basically, especially based on the fact that, you know, even though we're officially out of the drought, we're probably going to go right back into it. We need to conserve water, so we really should be looking at what we consider front and side yard, street-facing side yard landscaping. So those would be the 2 big issues with regard to property maintenance.
Thank you.
How many total issues do you think, Mr. Stewart, we're looking at?
Probably, I would say, large issues, I would say maybe say 6 to 10, and then there are smaller cleanup type issues that I would say would probably have another, say, dozen to 2 dozen. But again, those would be fairly small in nature again. Do we want to combine, say, all of our landscape standards, which are scattered throughout the code, into one section, for instance, same with parking and whatnot? So it's more of a cleanup as opposed to an actual issue that would require policy changes. The one good thing about the city being built out as it is that many of our actual existing development standards, for instance, our residential zones, our commercial zones and whatnot, unless I hear otherwise, I'm not proposing any changes. So all of those sections, for instance, we really wouldn't be looking at because we just don't need to. But there are some, again, some standards that we do need to look at. For instance, the accessory dwelling units will have an effect on all of our residential zones, potentially, for instance. So policy direction that I will be coming
Okay.
to you with.
New cleanup and revise.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, so what's the favor of the council?
Well, I'll chip in if I can. I would give code enforcement top priority because that's what really started this discussion. That there are folks that have been given notices of violation regarding interpretations of the code that I don't necessarily agree with. So we have some dangling participles that I think need to be roped in now. And so my suggestion to this council is that the other matters, minor versus major modification, has to do with development permits. We're a built-out community. I see those as secondary. Maybe it's worth cleaning that stuff up. But I think the priority at hand is code enforcement and property maintenance in particular. And one of the things I didn't hear from you, I would add to the property maintenance discussion, are the practices and procedures, policies that staff follows in issuing notices of violation. That had been drafted years ago, and the intent was to bring that forward with the, a year and a half ago, the changes regarding barbecues and abandoned couches and driveways and what have you, to assure the public that enforcement doesn't occur on a spot basis, but there's plenty of opportunity to rectify an issue before it gets to a point of a violation or a citation. So I wouldn't forget to include that as part of the discussion, the policies and practices, and I believe that our city attorney has a copy of what was previously drafted. So that would be my number one request, is that we give priority and the rest can trail. And the second is, if we do a workshop, I would urge that we do it in the evening hours, just like a council meeting, because as we've seen in previous workshops on other topics, we don't get many people to turn out. And these are pretty meaty issues relative to property maintenance. And I think we need to give the public every opportunity to participate. So if we do workshops, I'm fine with that, but I think the scheduling is important. Maybe every off Monday from our regular council Monday meeting. So those are my two observations, and certainly I defer to the rest of the council as to what they'd like to do.
You know, Mr. Stewart, in terms of the new state codes, like the accessory dwellings and all, do we have a little bit of time to pull things together on that? Does the state give us, say, you know, January 1st, you have to have something in place, and, you know, what's the time frame there?
Passed, actually. It was last January, so we are behind.
We're behind, okay.
There aren't really any negative impacts, so that's why I said we don't really have any real rush to accomplish any of this right now. So that way, again, we can incorporate as much time as we need and the public needs to basically vet out these issues. Yeah. So we haven't received, especially with regard to accessory dwelling units, we haven't received a whole lot of public interest in them. But it's still something that we should address at this point, just become compliant with the state before they change all their requirements again.
Right, and I'm thinking that if it's something passed, and we might be able to look at other communities and see what they have written, and I'm sure with, you know, our city attorney and city manager's experiences, we can find maybe some of those that may look like they can overlay into Port Hueneme.
The good news is we are actually, our current ordinance is pretty compliant with the state. There are a few tweaks, though, that, again, will require some policy direction.
So my feeling is that, you know, I like Councilmember Figg's suggestion about tackling code enforcement and then maybe taking care of these accessory dwellings, you know, 1 and 2. And then we can move on through the rest of the list as we see fit. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, this is a weighty enough subject, complex enough, that I think we ought to be having do this in a workshop format.
Okay.
I think that will also move things along quicker than trying to cram it into a series of council meetings, and depending on how busy the rest of the agenda is, it could be a problem or not. My predilection would be to focus on this and have a dedicated workshop or 2, or however many we need, and go through it and get it done.
Okay, all right. So would you think that we could tackle maybe this 1 and 2 in one workshop and see what else we might be able to fit in?
Yeah, it depends what we can do in about a 2-hour time frame, and you know, I'll leave that to staff.
Okay.
We have there's quite a wide. I mean, you know, if we're going through the whole code, then there's a lot of work to do, and how much we can get done in 1 meeting or 2 meetings. You know, I'll leave that to others' discretion.
But it's important as a workshop, yes. Yeah, Councilmember Hensley.
I don't know if that's a sense of emotion or not, but I concur with Councilman Sharkey that this should be public and it should be well discussed and open and get as much public participation as possible. So thank you, Mr. Sharkey.
All right. Yes.
And I also agree with Councilmember Figg. Let's do it on an evening where more citizens can show up. Bigger the audience, the better.
So with that, Mr. Stewart, you can work with our city manager and identify maybe some dates that might work in the near future, starting with workshops.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
So we'll go ahead and do that. And I will also bring back a more formalized list of the topics. Again, starting with the code enforcement, which really is first step anyway in the ordinance if we were going just through the ordinance by, you know, page by page, so to speak.
Okay.
And then the accessory dwelling units, and then we'll move on from there.
It would be good to see that roadmap.
Yes.
Yeah, what we need to cover from start to finish. Okay, super. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So we move on then to item number 12, City Manager Report and Comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and members of the council. We'll start out with letter A, which is really a housekeeping item. The title looks scarier and more significant than what we're really proposing. We're really not talking about changing the council meeting time. We're talking about the way that we do the agendas for council meetings and closed session versus open session in a way that we think will be simpler for staff particularly, but even the council and the public. I'm going to try to explain it simply, and if Charlie and Michelle want to jump in to help me do that, I welcome their involvement. But basically, the way we've been doing, at least for the last few years, the agendas, we do an agenda for the main open session council meeting that starts at 6:30. Then we also do what we are calling a special meeting for the closed session. That may start at 6 o'clock, that may start like it did tonight, this afternoon at 5 o'clock. We've done, you know, as early as 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Basically what we're proposing would be an ordinance change, and we would have to do it by ordinance just to formalize it, that would say that city council meetings start at 6 p.m. first and third Monday. So we're not monkeying around with the days at all. If we have closed session items, those items would be handled during that period between 6 and 6:30. There could be, and I think during the time I've been here, there have been maybe 2 or 3 times when we didn't have any closed session items. In that case, my understanding is we would actually start the open session at 6 p.m. But again, that's a pretty rare occurrence, especially these days with all the various property negotiations that we have going on. So the ordinance would say that city council meetings start at 6 p.m. There would be one agenda that would say Port Hueneme council meeting, date of such and such, starting time 6 p.m. The closed session items would be listed on that one agenda. So it gets us out of this business of having to do multiple agendas and calling them special meetings. Now, obviously, there will be some times when we have a large volume of closed session items that need to be handled on a particular date. In that case, we would probably have a special closed session, and that would require a separate agenda if we don't think we can get through the closed session items in that 30 minutes. There is also the option, which the mayor has reminded me of a few times, of finishing up closed session items at the end of the meeting, which is kind of a common practice in some cities. We've done it a couple times here. During the time that I've been here, it's not as normative here, but that's another option as well. So the bottom line is this is not a huge deal. No one is making us do this, but we wanted to bring it forward just as we've had a couple of people from other cities that have come to the organization over the last year or so and have noticed that the way we've been doing it is a little strange in comparison to the way that most cities handle their official meeting time and their agenda process. So we want to get your comments tonight. If there aren't objections to this tonight, we'll come back with a formal introduction of the ordinance, and it would be same thing as any other ordinance, first and second reading, and would take effect 30 days after that second reading. So again, mostly just a house cleaning item, but we think it'll simplify things a little bit from the agenda preparation standpoint.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Yes.
I just kind of like the sound of it as long as it isn't a pre-agenda hearing.
Pardon?
I say I concur with the concept, just as long as it doesn't become a pre-agenda hearing.
Oh, we did away with those.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so you're just saying that
I don't want to see
they're
it
not
slip back in under the covers. I'm just making my note. So thank you so much.
Okay. Yes,
So
Mayor Pro Tem.
people here in the public wanting to attend the meeting, they would see that the agenda starts at 6 with a closed session, and then when the closed session is finished, we can't necessarily predict the time, but we would say 6:30. And
Yeah, we would still, our practice would still be to start the open session at 6:30. And we would try to, keep ourselves disciplined in terms of how many items we put on that 6 to 6:30 closed session, because there are situations where councils will not honor that. We'll go an hour and 15 minutes in closed session. People are sitting out here.
Exactly.
I've seen it. It does happen in the real world. So we would need to be careful if we go to this approach to, honor that 30-minute closed session period. And again, if we have a large volume of closed session material, we either finish up at the end of the meeting or we do a special closed session at another time.
So I have two concerns here. Is that number one, we used to start everything at 6:30 and actually take care of closed session at the end after we went through the whole agenda, and closed sessions were always noticed at the end of the agenda, and we'd cover everything else and then head into closed session. For those that had wanted to sit, they would wait till we were out of closed session. Sometimes that would take an hour and a half or so. And then just within the last couple of years, we started to say, well, we have some time before the meetings that start at 6:30. Let's start meeting earlier. Let's start meeting at 6 or 6:30. Councilmember Sharkey reminded me that many years ago that the city council meetings started at 7:30. And it really is, for me, is that it allows the community to get home if they're working, and if there's an item on the agenda that you're really interested in or want to share your comments, that it gives you a little bit of that time before we get to conduct the meetings. So 6 o'clock, I think it may set a different kind of message to the public. I wouldn't be in favor of moving this in this way. I think that noticing the meetings at 6:30 and then possibly doing a special meeting because it's a closed item that we need a little bit more time to focus on, we can always notice those. But I would like for us to keep it as is. Those are my comments. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. Yeah, years ago, the city of Oxnard used to have an afternoon closed session before their meeting. They had 2 meetings on their meeting day. And yeah, the mayor's points are well taken. I mean, we did used to start at 7:30, and then we moved up early because Tony Young was involved with SCAG, and we used to meet on Wednesdays, and they were Thursday mornings, and so it was an early morning. And the idea of having evening meetings is once again that, you know, it gives folks an opportunity to get home from work and maybe have some dinner and get over here. So I don't know how the ordinance would work, but right now we've been reserving an earlier time for a closed session, but is it possible to keep the regular meeting time at 6:30, but then allow a 6 o'clock time slot for potential closed session and stick to half an hour, and if we don't get done in a half an hour, come back at the end of the meeting. I don't know if that would work. I think that would solve some of the problem.
Madam Mayor, may I make a comment real quick?
Yes, yes.
That certainly can be done. The point of this really is that we have to do and print and publish 2 separate notices for one meeting now. They have to be posted, they have to be sent out to everybody that's requested notice, so it's an unnecessary expense. By doing the ordinance, and what I would recommend is that we can change as accordance with the ordinance, and by just practice or resolution adopt a procedure that says, notwithstanding if we finish closed session earlier, we still won't start the open session till 6:30, so everybody has a definite time. They don't have to sit around from 6 and wait. You know, I think I've been in cities where we started earlier, we started later, and so on and so forth. The earlier you start, you do affect some people and their ability to be here, but on the other hand, the later you go into the evening, you affect other people who, either because of age or infirmity or because they have to get up early for work, can't stay that late. So it's 6 of one and half a dozen the other, and one of the good things is today most cities like us have televised meetings so people can see what occurred, and certainly if they are concerned enough to see something on the agenda, they can always send comments in writing, which would be read into the record if they couldn't make the meeting. But I share the concern about having to sit for half an hour, not knowing if you were going to start at 6:05 or 6:20 or 6:30 or when. But we could, as a matter of practice, just say 6:30 is when we start our open session, but we're having one meeting starting at 6, so we only have to do one notice, and we don't pay that extra publication cost.
So, Madam Mayor, so this ordinance would cover that procedure?
Yes.
I share the concern with the mayor here. I'm concerned about that 30-minute time block. It's frequently not enough time for closed session. And I don't want people sitting here after 6:30 because of that schedule. Can we start this, can one agenda be written to begin at, say, 5:30, but people know it's really going to be 6:30, that will start the regular meeting?
Yes.
As long as we can do that.
I mean, you can start the closed session whenever you want to, or you can start the closed session at 6 and carry it over afterwards, which is difficult because if you have a very long meeting, then, you know, oftentimes council members, and not to mention staff, are anxious to get up and leave. But you can start it at 5:30, and then the thing about the closed session is it's not so critical because the time isn't, because the public can't attend it anyway. But you do adjourn, and there is an opportunity for anybody to make public comment on closed session items before you go into closed session. So I think it's important to preserve that public right. And so what I would suggest you do is pick a time to start the meeting that you think covers most closed sessions, and then put the agenda that's saying that that open session will start at 6:30 regardless, and then you can usually cover your closed session. And if you can't, then you can continue items or you can meet afterwards. You'll have the flexibility to do that.
So what you're saying is it really is where we're just pulling the items into one agenda, we're noticing it once.
Doing once. It's really more of a housekeeping issue, and I think that the point is well taken about, you know, when does the open session begin? But we do that now. If you realize, we have continued closed session items because it was time to go to open session. We always pretty much start open session right on time, and we should continue to do that for the convenience of the public.
The other point I want to make is that I'm really the only one on this council who actually has other job outside of the city council. I work full-time. You work full-time too? No, but you're consulting, right? And so.
Well, I'm just a consultant.
So, well, I was one of those.
I would say I'm really retired.
Yeah, I know. You know, I've been a consultant too. Corporate America just kind of sounds, you know, interesting sometimes. And I know for me it's a challenge to get here at 6 o'clock because traffic is pretty bad, no matter what day.
So you wouldn't want to go any earlier?
So any earlier, that would be special, and I'd have to take the day off.
Yeah.
Which I have done, so I do that, but I'm concerned with, for anybody who wants to run for the city council seat, that 6 o'clock could be a real challenge for people to get off of work if we're looking at folks that still do have full-time jobs. So that was my other concern, is that I don't want to get us into a tricky part where people who are only retired or work part-time or
Or consultant.
but, you know, not maybe full-time, that's the only attractive part to being on the city council, and I don't think that we should really negate, you know, the folks that really do have opportunity to share. So that was another real concern for me.
Well, as I said, this ordinance doesn't really change what we're doing. And with the caveat that we always start at 6:30, then it removes any uncertainty on the part of the public. All it does is save money by not requiring us to publish 2 separate notices for one meeting, which is, and I've never seen this done before, honestly, the way that it's done here. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense.
But I think, you know, and I just want to share, because history has it that, you know, for the 8-9 years into my 10th year here, is that we always had our agenda notice at 6:30, and we'd cover all the closed sessions at the end, and we just got into a habit, maybe setting a precedent these last couple of years, of starting closed sessions during that maybe downtime of the afternoon. So we got into a habit. Now we're into this saying, well, why don't we change it? Well, it was just a habit that kind of seemed okay, but do we really, for me, I don't want to permanently change it. And it was where even before me preceding that, it was when the meeting was at 7:30, and, you know, and Councilmember Sharkey had shared about that. So these practices that kind of seem to, you know, say, hey, you know, well, we'll just throw in an hour and cover consent or cover closed at that time, has now become really the norm. And I don't know if we ever wanted it to be the norm. It was just a nice place to park closed items that would take a little bit longer to discuss if we left them later on. So we've gotten into this habit of, you know, maybe thinking that this is the norm versus it's going to be special. Yeah, Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the sake of brevity and to bring, some people look a little bit tired out here. I so move that we adopt this ordinance. We can change it again if needed. That's my motion.
Is there a second to that?
No, not a second, Madam Mayor, but I would like to suggest 5:30. I can't recall in the limited time I've been on this council that we've been able to conclude closed session items in a half an hour. And I'm not a fan of having it trail at the end of the meeting, because I'm brain dead usually by that point in time, and I'm not going to be very useful in closed session at 11 o'clock at night. So my suggestion, and if Mr. Hensley is willing to modify his motion, would be to modify to 5:30, with the idea that regardless of what that period of time is, that we have a fixed start time for the regular calendar at 6:30.
So
With that, I'll
So
second your
modified.
motion as it
Thank
was
you.
amended.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion. Could we have a voice vote, please, or a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fick,
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg,
Yes.
Mayor Schnapper.
No. Okay, so motion's approved, 4-1. All right, so we go on to 4B.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The item 4B is getting some direction and discussion from the council tonight on this whole idea of a citizen advisory commission. You'll recall that in the strategic action plan that former Mayor Figg brought forward in early 2017, there was discussion of having at least two, there may have been more than that originally, various citizen advisory, I think he used the term committees. As the year evolved and we talked about the practicalities of that, we decided to maybe start the old line about walk before you run, and maybe start with one citizen advisory commission, because originally there had been suggestion, for example, one focused just on beach issues, a beach advisory commission, and then a general citizens advisory committee. So the consensus has been over the last few months that we would start with one and consolidate some of those roles into one citizens advisory group. We are using the term commission now because that would give the commission the ability to have committees if it chose to. What we're proposing tonight, just as a conversation starter, and I will say that Council Member Sharkey was consulted at least 2 or 3 times during the summer and fall. He was assigned in the strategic action plan assignments to this particular item. So he may choose to share his thoughts as we go forward after I complete my report. We're really presenting 2 different ideas that you can talk about and use as a basis for your own ideas and suggestions. One would be to take an existing commission that we have, which is the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission. It's a 5-member commission focused on exactly what it says, recreation and fine arts, and expand the role of that commission to become more of a generalized citizens advisory commission, advisory to the council. We've been all over the map with the discussion about how many members we should have. We have thought about having a larger membership, maybe going to 10, for example, with each council member appointing 2 members. The idea with that, of course, would be broader participation from different demographics, different neighborhoods. The problem with that is that you run into the issue of, can we find 10 people who will participate consistently? Can we get a quorum? So the thought that I think the consensus at the staff level now is let's start with 5 and see where we go from there. It may be that if there's a lot of interest and a lot of participation and more folks that want to get involved, you could go to a 7-member or a 9-member or even an even number of 10. But the first suggestion would be, let's take an existing commission, which has not been particularly active over the last year at least, and expand its role. So the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission would become the Citizens Advisory Commission. The other would be, and by the way, we do have 2 vacancies right now on the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission. So you could offer, if you chose this option, you could offer the existing members the chance to stay on in the new expanded role and then fill these vacancies to come to your membership of 5. The other approach would be to just kind of start from scratch and actually have a separate, not involve the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission, let them continue to exist with their current focus, but start a brand new Citizens Advisory Commission. Again, I think staff recommendation at this point would be 5 members to start. and with each council member appointing one member of the 5-member body. And that may take a little bit longer to get off the ground just because we're dealing with 5 people as opposed to trying to fill vacancies on the existing commission. But it gives you the chance to kind of start from scratch with a body that is brand new, has a new set of assignments. And the 2 things I think that we feel strongly about at the staff level, and I think Councilmember Sharkey agreed when we had the discussions with him, we want to make sure that we really reach out to as many of the different areas of the city, and again, different demographics as possible, to see if we can get broad representation on this commission. The other and really important thing is to make sure that these folks understand that they are advisory to the city council, and really they should have at least during this first year, a set of assignments that is closely, tightly associated with the council's goals or strategic action plan goals. Some of the nightmares I've seen in other places I've been has related to these groups that they may be appointed by the council, but they kind of get off on their own tangents and their own agendas that don't have anything to do with what the council is really shooting to get accomplished. And that could be a concern here if we don't have a clear understanding by the members of what their role is as an advisory commission and their assignments in terms of trying to carry out council policy. So those would be some of the things that we would see as important things for them to understand once they are appointed and serving as members. So, again, those are just 2 ideas. You may have your own ideas of how to do things, and that's really what we're here for tonight, is to get some direction from the staff on how to get this off the ground, and then we'll take that direction and get it moving. I think we can do all of this based on our research by resolution. I don't think we're going to have to get involved in ordinances. We've involved, especially toward the last 60 days here, we've involved Mr. Green in checking into this for us, and to my pleasant surprise, I don't think we're going to have to rework a bunch of ordinances to make this happen. Some or all of it can be done by simple resolution, and the roles and memberships and all of that can be adjusted by resolution in a simpler way than having to deal with changing the city code. So with that, I will stop talking, listen to your direction and your advice, and we'll take that tonight and move forward.
Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously we've had some significant staff changes since we first began this process, and we arrived at a position where we have a committee on the ground, and we perhaps ought to make use of what we have. I would like very much to attract some people into this that are not the usual folks that we all know that show up for everything. I think we should be trying to populate this with a little more geographic distribution. We don't have anybody never anybody from Marina Village that's too involved, or Boulder Park, or Ventura West. There are neighborhoods in this city that are underserved and underrepresented. And the question is, how do you reach them? How do you populate them? And it just seemed that rather than try and build something that would be more difficult, we have a vehicle here, and I might suggest that maybe one of their first tasks would be to look at how do we expand the participation on this committee, it doesn't have to be at 5. I think maybe even a larger number might be better, but the idea here is to just get this thing rolling, and then we can build from there.
Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Madam Mayor, not to beat weak horses, but sounds like a good idea to me. I'm so moved that we follow this procedure. We can make adjustments as time comes by.
Okay, Councilmember Fig.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I appreciate the simplicity of merely changing the name of a commission, but I think it misses the mark because the mission of the advisory commission is much broader than the narrow focus of the Fine Arts Commission. So I'm more inclined that you've introduced something that you didn't actually have in your staff report, correct? A standalone.
Yeah, the staff
okay.
recommendation was the expansion of recreation and fine arts.
That was your recommendation initially. Okay, well, I'm much more comfortable with your second option. I also think that it's important that we have protocols and guidelines for the operations of the commission. Because I concur with you, and in my past experience, I've been the staff liaison to a number of advisory bodies. And as you point out, without some sort of clear, succinct framework, committees can take a life of their own and not necessarily work toward the interest of the very purpose that the council had envisioned when the commission or advisory body was established. So, number one, I'm not in agreement with the motion that was made. I'm in agreement with your second concept. I think we need to have a newly constituted body. And when we do outreach for soliciting applications, I think it's important that the application include a request of each individual that chooses to apply, that they indicate their experience, their community involvement, their familiarity with the issues, so that we are getting folks that really are well suited to a broad organization such as an advisory commission. So, and then finally, I read the municipal code in dealing with a general establishment of these kinds of bodies, and I like the idea that the city manager can select an ex officio a member. Usually that's a staff individual, because having that staff individual sitting in at board meetings for advisory bodies helps to get them focused on the issues at hand and the council's direction. And I think that that's one way to try to help these committees keep on point. So that's my suggestion. Now I can give you, I have a very long recommendation I can read to you, but we already have a motion on the table. So
if I may, I would withdraw my motion, because the Fine Arts Commission, this is much broader than the Fine Arts Commission, so I think we examine it and go forward on it, whether tonight or next meeting. Thank you.
Well, do we have any speaker cards? Because I don't want to
do.
make a motion until the public has an opportunity.
We do, so if I may, we do have a speaker card, Laura Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, staff. Thank you for taking the time to let me come up and speak on this issue. I have to go back a little ways, about a year ago, when the strategic plan was initially issued and put out for public review. I noticed that the plan was missing public safety and disaster preparedness as a strategic goal. So my intent was to try to find a way to integrate those elements, those functions into the strategic plan. And I know that we were coming off a very exciting 2017, the election period, and there was a group of people within the community who wanted to have more involvement in with government, and particularly here with the city of Port Hueneme. And I was asked to help develop this concept of a citizen advisory board, citizen advisory commission. And so I took the time to put together the Citizen Advisory Board concept using some of the documents that were referred to in the staff report. Now, I don't know if anybody ever saw this. Okay, so everybody's seen it. Well, I hope it's all my work is not in vain. I hope that no matter what ends up being formulated here, that there is some kind of citizen advisory component to this, you know, that ends up resulting from this action, and that this could be changed in terms of how the formation of this citizen advisory takes place. To me, personally, it doesn't really matter. I don't have a dog in this fight, so to speak. I was merely trying to facilitate some organization to an idea. And that's what I like to do. I like to take an idea and I like to put it down on paper and I write plans and I try to lend some organization to it. I'm very much interested in working within the system and not being a maverick and working out the system. I'm all about helping the City Council carry out its mission. So again, I just want to draw your attention to this document. Hopefully whoever ends up on this, if you decide that you're going to convert the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission into the CAB, that they use this, maybe has some foundational material to help guide them along. And I'm always available to help provide some leadership and some, direction in terms of how to formulate policies and how to write directives on how these commissions might perform under the City Council's direction. So I can't say that I'm now any more available than I was early on, because I'm getting very busy with other things, but I'm happy to lend my opinion if asked.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could weigh in on this, I know that staff has really put together, hold on just a second. Okay. So staff has really put together some great information in terms of how they could see staffing element as well as commissions that already exist, and with the identification of how to make something really work within the confines of everything else that we're working with, and really make it a very broad and active commission. And with that, they've incorporated Councilmember Sharkey's input. So it was assigned to someone, Councilmember Sharkey, to work with staff, and they've come up with this idea. I'm all in favor of getting more people involved, but we do have a standing committee that might really work well with an expanded kind of version, a 2.0 version versus a 1.0. But also, I believe what's really important is that each council member actually have an opportunity to then nominate the person. So we collect information on who wants to be part of it, but we 5 decide each one has like 1 seat additional on that commission. So that's the way we really activate and engage people. So I just wanted to weigh in on this issue before we get more discussion here. But so I have Tom Dunn, but you say CAC. I don't know what that means. Do you want to talk about this? Item number B? Oh, okay. So, all right. So that's a code word, 12B. All right. Tom Dunn, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I want to thank Laura for all the work she did with the awareness program and putting it together. And she worked the same way on putting this proposal together. And it was taken from this pamphlet, a lot of pages. And it's called the Local Government Citizen Advisory Boards. And it's a report of hundreds of cities all over the United States that put together community advisory boards to work with the council meetings. And what they did was there are different plans in there for different sized cities and for the type of government. So she was able to find one that had, here's what the most people use that are the size of Port Hueneme and have the city council type of government. So everything in the standard action plan and in her report that was given to the city manager to pass out contains what the standard action plan wanted and what this folder or this report recommends. So it's a product that allows the city council to work with the citizens. The main thing I heard when I got involved with the city a couple years ago was, we don't trust the city. We never hear from them. We have no input. We have no communication. This is devised to have communication in the areas that are needed. Various committees can be set up. And we will find people to be on those committees to gather information for the council, give it to them, or vice versa. The council can say, we need this information on an initiative you want to do. Well, let's find out ahead of time what they want, what ideas they have. An example was the Ventura County, or the highway tax. When they went to do that, they didn't do a lot of research from the people. They went out and they included hikers, bikers, all kinds of extracurricular things to put in that bill, and people read it and said, no, we want the money to go to fix the traffic problems, to fix the potholes. So it lost because they didn't know ahead of time of what to look for. The major problem in any way you do this is to get people involved. There are very few people from other parts of town that even come to these city council meetings. It's going to be very hard to get the committees participating with qualified people. The 5 board members alone would be difficult. Your choice is to get people that have an idea of what's going on in the city and knows what needs to be done. Who's going to roll it up? You can't just ask anybody. If they have no idea, you're behind the 8 ball. You need people that know what's going on, will work with you, and get the trust of the community. That's what is needed out there, and it's communication. You have to talk about all of the things you want to do on all types of social media.
Mr. Dunn, can you wrap up in like a sentence or two?
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
Thank you. You need to get what you're doing on a positive block out to the people so they know that you care about them, to take care of what has not been there in the past for them. That's your responsibility, and I think this is the way to do it, and it will solve a lot of problems and be a lot better for the people of Port Hueneme. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Are there any other comments? So, did you have any
Perhaps hearing this, we need to go back to the drawing board, revisit it, get some helpful hints from Mr. Dunn and from our lady out here who knows how to put this stuff together. It's a big, complex situation. I looked at it and at first blush, it looked just like the Fine Arts Committee. They've been going a long time. But there's far more that we started years ago, or 2 years ago, a year ago. And thanks to Martha and other people, we've been working towards that. And we seem to stumble somewhere along the line, but we need to get rejuvenated. So I think we should clarify our mission and redraft it and come back and present it to the next time. Thank you so much.
So, yes, Councilmember Fig.
Well, I'm prepared to offer a motion if you care to entertain it.
Well, we'll see how
Okay,
it goes.
let's give it a try. This would be the motion, that staff be directed to redraft an implementing resolution that accomplishes the following. Number 1, retention of the Fine Arts and Recreation Commission with separate but concurrent formation of a new Citizens Advisory Commission. Number 2, solicitation of applications for citizen appointments to the newly formed commission. Number 3, applications shall elicit information as to education, experience, and community involvement that expressly qualifies the candidates to serve in a community advisory capacity. Number 4, preparation of bylaws and guidelines as to the overarching mission, operational protocols, limits of authority, lines of communication governing the advisory commission. Number 5, establishment of commission appointment procedures that entails the following elements. A, each elected council member shall be entitled to appoint a member from the pool of applicants, with the city manager appointing a staff person to serve as an ex officio capacity. Number B, any commission member may be removed at any time for any reason by a majority vote of the council. And item C, subsequent vacancies shall be filled by a majority vote of the council. And that's the extent of my motion, but I did want to clarify the purpose. And initially, this is a constituted body, but over time, members come and go on all advisory bodies, and who knows who the original appointing member was of the council at the time that that person was installed. So the idea here is that we're all here together. We establish the commission. We each have an appointment to that body. But at any time that there's vacancies, that it's going to be the full body that then decides at that point in time. Could be a totally different group of people on this council to fill those vacancies. So everybody has a say by majority as to filling those vacancies.
Madam Mayor, I second that motion.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
So we're faced with the option of using people that are already shown interest, capability, and energy in volunteering to serve on advisory committee, and using that, the folks that are already on the ground to build from, or we can start from scratch and do something else. And that's clearly the choice before us. You know, I'm not sure about having council majorities appoint people. I think there's something to be said for having the possibility of minority appointments, let's put it that way. I think that's an important aspect also. So I got a little problem with that clause. But you know, I don't know how, I don't know what how many staff hours have been spent on this already. I've got a little problem with spending a whole lot more when we have the possibility of using some of the folks that are already here and tasking them with ramping up perhaps a bigger, more inclusive committee. So I can't really support the motion the way it's presented.
Call for the question.
So with that, hold on just a second. Hensley, did you have anything to say, Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
And then we'll continue the conversation.
Okay,
we have to vote on calling the question. Point of order. We have to vote on calling the question. We don't vote on the question. We want to call for the question.
Call for the question?
Yes.
Okay.
If a majority calls for the question. The motion to call for the question takes precedence over the main motion.
Let's vote.
All right. Could we have a roll call, please?
Are we voting on the motion to call, or are we voting on the main motion?
As presented by...
So we're voting on the main motion.
We don't want to run afoul of the rules of procedure.
Okay, go.
So let's vote on the call for the question, and then we can vote on the
Okay,
motion.
so we're
With
going
the
to vote on
understanding
the
that
call for the
approving it
question.
terminates discussion, and it would immediately go to vote. That's what call for the question means. Okay.
So then if Mayor Pro Tem Berg wants to say something, he has to say it before we call for the question,
Or before the vote for calling question.
right?
Well,
Because I don't, you know, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Hensley, but I do want to say that if there's anyone else on the dais that wants to speak, please let them speak. Thank you. Go ahead. So if you had any questions or comments.
We have a motion and we have a second, right? I feel that we don't need the Recreation and Fine Arts Commission right now. I don't see the value. I would rather focus my attention on building a Citizens Advisory Commission. We may need to massage, I think I heard Councilman Sharkey say that it would be a majority of the board per each member. We can just have one person appoint a member, and that way it'd be fine with me. But let's start from scratch and get an advisory commission up and going.
Yeah, just to clarify, is the point that I was trying to make is that over time, members may vacate their position on the advisory body, and yet the appointing member is gone from the council.
I hear you.
Okay, that's why the majority concept.
We need to work out our process for how we would do that, and why can't the appointment be good for a year, 2 years?
So the clarification here is that the appointments for each of these commissions go alongside when the council is seated at that time, unless somebody dies or resigns or, you know, or moves away, et cetera, et cetera. But it always coincides with somebody actually being seated.
You're saying that the appointment would be coterminous with the term of office of the appointed council member?
It has been for each of these commissions.
Does that make sense?
The city clerk
Does that make sense?
advised me that
that's the way it's been done.
That's the way it's been done.
Always.
What do building commissions do when, you know, they have in other cities where city council members appoint commission to review
Oh, like a planning commission?
public planning, yeah, things like the planning commission.
Well, Madam Mayor, the city attorney can probably answer this better than I can, but appointments can be structured any number of ways. They can be structured for a defined term. They can be structured for the term of the appointing officer. There's any number of ways to structure it. What's always been here is that the appointment runs coterminous with the term of the appointing member.
The way that I've seen it in most cities that I've been involved in, and this doesn't mean it's representative of all cities, is that each member nominates a person that they would like to have seated on the commission, and then it requires a majority vote to approve that person. That's sort of a two-step process, which allows for a minority position. It doesn't prevent a majority from exercising, but it does create a situation where it's impolitic and sometimes unwise not to accept the nomination. So that's an alternative you could consider as well.
Might I ask, does the ordinance already provide for this procedure that these terms of advisory members to various commissions, their term is commensurate with the appointing a member of the council?
Yes.
So we could simply default to what the ordinance already calls for. Is that correct?
On that point, at least.
And
Well,
so that's
perhaps
what
we
it
should
shows right
perhaps we
now.
should delay the matter and allow you to see what the ordinance is, and allow you to think a little bit more about take that ordinance or revise it, or
You know, this is a matter that's going on a year now.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we ought to move on. And I would revise my motion to simply default to the ordinance as to appointments. But the initial appointments, each one of us makes.
I second the motion.
Second the revision, or
With the demise of the Recreation and Finance.
well, you know, I said retention because I don't want to offend anybody. These are members that were appointed for a very focused objective. If we no longer believe that that mission is necessary,
It's going to be taken up by the Citizens Advisory.
then again, I'll revise my recommendation, or yes, my recommendation, and say termination, not retention of the Fine Arts Commission.
So moved in the modification.
seconding me.
That's a second.
Okay, so.
Okay, I guess I made that motion,
So,
correct?
okay. So the clarification now is that the motion has been amended to say that we're going to take a look at the ordinance right now?
No.
No. Okay.
No, we would, rather than the procedure I suggested about filling vacancies, we simply default to the ordinance that we currently have on the books.
Isn't that what I just said? That we would look at the ordinance that we have?
Well, no,
No, we would
it's already
We would
there.
follow the ordinance.
just look at it, we'll follow.
Follow the ordinance.
As to the appointment and term, or as to the term of the appointees.
And the filling of vacancies
I think
thereafter.
Mr. Figg said that
Okay.
the original appointment would be individual by the council members.
Right.
Correct.
I'm not sure that's what the existing procedure says, but maybe it does, so.
Well, I'm not here to amend the ordinance. If the ordinance rules, then we should follow that. Okay, have we completely confused the
So,
subject?
yes, I think we have.
You've confused staff.
Could we, hold on just a second, could we ask for a rereading of what that motion and second was?
I'll be glad to do
look
that.
at
Good
this.
luck.
Because I am getting that same
I'll be glad to try.
everybody, okay.
Would you like to hear it?
Let's hear it.
That would be
You
good.
got
Yes.
it. All right. That staff be directed to redraft an implementing resolution that accomplishes the following. 1, termination of the Fine Arts and Recreation Commission with separate but concurrent formation of a new Citizens Advisory Commission. 2, solicitation of applications for citizen appointments to the newly formed commission. 3, applications shall elicit information as to education, experience, and community involvement that expressly qualifies candidates to serve in a community advisory capacity. Number 4, preparation of bylaws and guidelines as to the overarching mission, operational protocols, limits of authority, and lines of communication governing the Advisory Commission. Number 5, establishment of the commission appointment procedures that entails the following elements. Each elected council member shall be entitled to appoint a member from the pool of applicants, with the city manager appointing a staff member to serve in an ex officio capacity. Any commission member may be removed at any time for any reason by a majority vote of the council. And number 3, the term of appointment and any subsequent vacancies shall be governed by the existing municipal code.
I second that motion.
Could you just state the last one, please?
The last one.
The last one.
Just the last one. You can
Okay. That the term of the commission appointment and any subsequent vacancies on the commission shall be filled as stipulated in the current municipal code.
Okay.
Does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
No. But motion carries 4-1. Okay. All right, so we move on then to item 4C. We're still on city manager report, right? Okay.
That's right.
Go ahead, council meetings.
Yeah, so we've reached that important time of year where the council addresses all of its committee and regional commission assignments. Michelle, city clerk, put together kind of a roster with recommendations based on Mayor Munoz Schnapp's thoughts for this year of 2018. And we need to get some direction from the council tonight on whether the council wants to accept all those recommendations, make some changes to some, and accept others. I think in the past we've pretty much gone down the list individually and made decisions that way. But yeah, we need to get some direction tonight on who will be assigned as primary and then alternate. And we have included information in the staff report on the dates for the meeting, frequency of the meetings, and the days of the meetings. So that may come into play for some of you based on your schedule. So with that, we'll turn it over back to the mayor to kind of walk us through this discussion of each assignment.
Okay. I do want to point out that there are new committee appointments, both with the REACH board, that it was suggested that there would be an appointment by the city council of somebody from this council to serve on that board. And then timely notice came through from the Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance Board. Apparently we have had a slot on their board, but never have really activated anybody to serve in that capacity. So that's why it was added to this list.
Madam Mayor, I don't know, my recollection of that is that with the vote to join the REA failed on this city council. So I don't know that we were ever members at all.
Well, that was a letter that was sent to me from Linda Parks that said that this is what you have. You're part of this group, and you do have a seat on the board.
There is one clarification to that. Just in the last few days, Sue Hughes from the CEO's office wrote to me, and they're excited about the fact that we may be interested in participating. You can still select someone tonight, but we will need to bring back, it's just kind of a quickie resolution saying the council wishes to join this body.
So we did. We didn't.
Apparently,
we did not. The council in its wisdom decided not to join. I mean, it doesn't cost us anything, but they decided not to do it. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll bring that back February 5th, but it doesn't stop you from selecting someone tonight if you choose to.
Okay. All right. Very good. And you have then. Page 83 of 89, you actually have then the list of groups, committee and commissions, the meeting schedule and location if there is a stipend for that, that position. And then on page 85 and
Actually, page 79 has got a good rundown.
86. What was that?
Page 79 has got the rundown with the members.
Mm-hmm. And then any changes proposed, et cetera. Just to make it quick here, I put on page 85. So 85 is like a quick snapshot of 79 through 81.
Madam Mayor, we're going to take these individually?
We can, we have
I
in the
would
past.
prefer,
We've
yes.
gone through each.
Please do.
Yeah, okay, super, we'll do that. So Animal Services, right now, the appointees are Fig and Berg, and propose no changes for that, if that's okay. Is that all right with you folks?
Yes.
Nod yes, yeah. Councilmember Fig, yeah, okay. So we move on to beach erosion, Beacon.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may.
Mhm.
There are times when you need to take cuts, there's times that you need to avoid. We discussed this last year. The Beach Erosion Authority Beacon is an excellent organization, but if I recall correctly, it's $10,000 a year. We were going to terminate that for 1 year last year out of our budget. We didn't. I see it's back on again. If anything else, I would rather for this year, possibly next year, that we step out of that program temporarily, coming back to it later, and either use some of those funds towards either the library or the police department. I don't think we need to expend $10,000 at this juncture for something that it does have benefit, but it's not an immediate benefit in a tight financial situation that we're in.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
it's
Councilmember
significantly less than $10,000, and this isn't a budget. This is just appointing a representative. And I would be
Yes,
interested
Madam
in
Mayor,
maintaining the position.
none of these bodies, membership in them is not on the agenda, and especially ones that require financial commitment so that notice to the public would be made. So you can postpone appointments, or you can make them, or with subsequently bringing back motions regarding membership, but we can't consider the membership tonight.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I suggest,
Yes.
the appropriate time for discussion for that would be during the budget process.
And I know that we did have that discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so we passed a 2-year budget that would carry us through June 2019, correct? Okay, all right.
So I'd be interested in staying on this.
And Councilmember Fig?
Well, I don't have an objection. Mr. Sharkey is the chair of that body, and I think it's an important role, and it's representative of the city, and we've already committed ourselves for half a year. So, but my desire is that not wait for the budgetary period. We already have an invoice that needs to be paid, and I would like to be able to authorize that, but with the proviso that come the next fiscal year, that we give Beacon notice now that we can't vote in advance, but that they should be prepared for our departure. The only other way I could see doing this is just keep a slate as it is, and then ask that this be agendized for the next regular meeting to talk about the budgeting process and the duration of time that we continue membership in Beacon.
So if my recollection serves me well, is that we've already budgeted for a 2-year period carrying us through June 2019. It's not to say that we can't bring it back, and I do recognize what our city attorney is saying, is that membership is not up for vote tonight. That really is where we're just appointing people to the board, but we can always then agenda anything that we want to bring back for discussion. But it's not to be discussed tonight.
And that would be my motion, that we bring it back at the next regular meeting for discussion.
Second.
Okay, so should we just deal with this?
It's
bringing it back onto agenda.
That should be on the future agenda.
Yeah, so just put it on the future agenda.
This one commission?
This one membership.
This one membership,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so that's not, okay, very good. All right, so with that then, the appointees would be Sharkey as the board member and then Fig as the alternate. Is that okay? All right, okay. Moving on then. CJPIA, that's our insurance company, California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. No proposed changes there. That would be I serve as board and Councilmember Sharkey as alternate. City Port Standing Committee, that last year it was our former Mayor Fig and Councilmember Berg. So we would just swap that out so that I would be, I would serve as the board member, and so would Mayor Pro Tem Berg, and then the alternate would be John Sharkey. Is that okay with everybody?
No, I would move it this time that we go ahead and keep Councilmember Fig and myself on that City Port Standing Committee and just make no changes to it.
I second that motion.
Okay, so could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
No. All right, so the motion carries 3-2, so then it would be Fig as the member and Berg as the member and then Sharkey as the alternate. All right, so EDCBC, no changes with that. Berg would be the board member and I would be the alternate. Any changes on that? No? All right, so we move forward then. Gold Coast Transit still stays the same.
Madam Mayor, Gold Coast Transit is generally the position taken by our VCTC rep, which is Mr. Berg. And I don't know if he wants to take on this role as well, but it's a Wednesday morning in Oxnard.
Wednesday morning.
10 a.m.
First Wednesday of the month, right?
I don't need it necessarily.
First
It
Wednesday.
was a suggestion. It works good to have the VCTC rep
Both of them?
as that. If you don't want to take on the workload, that's fine.
Well, then I'd be glad to take it on then.
Okay.
Okay, so then that would be you're the board member, and then I'll be the alternate on that one. Okay. Point Mugu Regional Airport Authority, we have had a meeting. Usually it gets noticed for the summer. And so that would be I as the board representative and Councilmember Sharkey as the alternate. Any changes with that? No? All right. Port Hueneme Water Agency. So we've had...
Madam Mayor, if Mr. Berg would like to move up from alternate, I'll move back to being alternate.
On PHWA?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would that be okay with you?
Okay.
That's it.
Well, let's see when they meet.
4 o'clock in the afternoon preceding a city council meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right, so it would be Fig, Schnapp, and Berg. And then Councilmember Sharkey would be the alternate for PHWA? Yep. Yeah, okay, very good. RDP 21. So this is where Councilmember Sharkey is the lead and alternate is Fig. So I propose that I would be then the alternate on that one.
Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yeah, yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may?
Yes,
Okay.
I said yes.
To me, this is an absolutely critical situation for our relationships with this community. I went back last year trying to visualize the situation. Mr. Sharkey has been doing it for 20, 22 years now.
No, I haven't.
Well, 18, how many?
Since Tony Vonti left, probably
Since
about
Tony
12.
Voss left in 12, okay. Not trying to be combative or argumentative about this whole process. The military is something just like a police department or other fire department, a very unique situation. And representatives sometimes need to be given a fresh view. I feel that Councilman Sharkey is, for his, since Troy left, whatever, has done probably an admirable job. But my viewpoint, and this is my viewpoint, and going back there, it's become more or less of a kind of a junket. Now, one of the things that I found is that as a member of RDP, that when you go back, you talk to these people, the contacts that you make and the follow-ups that you make are absolutely critical, both on the legislative house side of the house and the military side of the house. Councilman Berg has tremendous amount of experience in 3 different languages, possibly 4. He speaks Korean or writes Chinese. He's got an excellent background of international trade. He works and knows the port inside out. He's got a very good relationship with the Navy base. I think it's absolutely essential, like Councilman Sharkey said a little while ago, and one of the issues that we needed to come along with some fresh air. Now, whatever Sense Toy did whenever, I think it's time that we interject a brand new representative that gives a whole fresh new vision for this. So I strongly encourage and nominate the lead director for RDP, Councilman or Mayor Pro Tem Will Berg.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, I agree. Mr. Berg is a very strong candidate for this position. I would hope that he will take over next year after I'm gone. This is not a position that you can just step right into, and I would like to see him accompany us to Washington. And there's a great deal to learn in this position. I think he's up to it. I think he'll be an excellent representative. So I'd like to see him as the alternate.
Okay.
So, this is how I see the world. Berg's going to be around, and Mr. Sharkey isn't. Now's the time to make the transition. And I see it as being Berg as the appointee and John being the alternate, because the two of them need to team up back in Washington, or at least in preparation of that endeavor. I wouldn't call it a junket necessarily, but I think that I agree with Mr. Hensley that Mr. Berg, it's time for him to take that position with the assistance of Mr. Sharkey in an alternate role.
Is that a second?
So if I can, pardon?
Is that a second?
Oh, you mean if that was a motion?
Yeah, I made the motion that Will Berg be the prime leader of it.
So is that a second?
Well, I'll make a second, but I know that there are others here that want to have their piece or their say.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I respect Councilman Sharkey's experience and position on this board, this committee, and it would be important for him to have some handover period with me. I understand that there may be a separate budget for the travel back to Washington, D.C. Is that right?
Yes, it's
right?
yes, it's separate from an individual council member's
there is one
budget.
One dedicated line item for one member. We have sent more than one member before, but the additional member used his own council training budget funds, and I think may have come out of pocket for some money.
Paid his airfare himself.
Right.
Yeah. So in any event, as an alternate, I would still want you to be there with me.
Oh, I'm planning. I've been invited to go by the board, so I do plan to go on the lobbying trip.
Regardless. And yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay,
Call for the question?
So then, yeah, so there was a motion and a second, but it was for
Berg as the appointee and John as the alternate.
And you're saying that you'd be happy to step in as the alternate? Is that what I was hearing?
No, you didn't hear that. You heard me say that I would be happy to accept the nomination to be the lead person on that committee. And I would still want Councilman Sharkey to make his Washington, D.C. trip. But that $2,000 travel budget would fall to me.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that because I did not hear it that way.
Okay.
So I am going to, whenever I don't hear it correctly,
Ask me again.
ask you again, because you have to be yes is a yes and no is a no, and you can't, yeah, thank you. Clarifying is always good. All right, so the motion then is for, and seconded, is for Berg to
Berg
be
as the lead person,
and John,
the stipend, the special stipend for going back there will be addressed to the lead person on that trip.
well, I guess the stipend is, actually it stands that way, is that the stipend
The expenses,
goes to the
it's out of
board.
pocket, covering out of pocket
Yeah, it already
expenses,
goes to
yeah.
the board member. So could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Berg, you don't have any vacations planned for this trip, do you? You have?
No.
Okay, then I'll say yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
No. All right, so motion carries 3-2. So Berg is the main and John is the alternate here. Okay, so VCOG. So with that, it would be, I'm still on that board, and then the alternate has been John Sharkey, and so proposed alternate change would be Berg. Unless, John, you want to keep it?
That's fine with me.
Okay. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, very good. VCTC, it's just a board member, no alternate, so that was Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Yes.
Is that okay? All right. And then VRSD. So right now we have Councilmember Sharkey is the board member, Councilmember Fig is the alternate. Any proposed changes there to suggestion? Okay, so that stands. REACH, so that's new. And currently that is, it's going to be meeting 4 times a year here at City Hall or another facility. There's no stipend to that. It's a brand new position. Let's see, what do we have? Yeah, okay. No specific day or time has been set, but that'll be ongoing and in development. And I know Mr. Steve Kenny is on that board, and it constitutes maybe 3 people currently, and with a need to recruit more people onto that board. So with that, I'll, if there are anyone that wants to nominate someone else or be on that board, yes.
I'm waiting for the time.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Fig.
Mr. Kenny asked if I would be willing to serve, knowing that it wasn't my call to make, but I said certainly if I would be of assistance in your organization, I'll be glad to. So just to maybe throw my name out there, not because I solicited it, it was...
And I would second
well, that sounds like it's you're volunteering to serve on that board. I'm reading between the lines here.
Madam Mayor, then if this is the
Yes,
circumstances,
Councilmember Hensley.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I might, since this is the circumstances that just came to light, I toss a nomination for Mr. Fig for this board. He kind of started and got involved with it, and he knows a lot of the action of it.
And he also volunteered.
And he also
more importantly.
Yeah. All right. So is there anyone else that wants to consider that? Okay, so
well, how
Tom,
about
you have
you,
that
Madam?
one. No, that's fine.
No, we need an alternate. Oh, it says
none.
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
so
Okay.
you're on that board. Okay, super. And then last but not least, how do you want to deal with Regional Energy Alliance?
Madam Mayor, I know this board feels the necessity to whip me and punish me and make sure that I don't get any extra committees and commissions and comments and stipends, et cetera, Go ahead, I'm a good whipping boy, a good whipping post, but the Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance Board, I served on it, I'm very interested. It doesn't pay squat, and I have a strong interest, and I still plan to go, whether you guys don't want me on it or not. But if you wish to continue this punishment for a non-stipend situation, great. Otherwise, I plan to go, and I would like to be able to nominate it to this board.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Fig.
had you not made that kind of speech, I was prepared to endorse your appointment. But when you make those kinds of comments, it causes me to pause, and I would not.
I withdraw my motion.
Wait. Anybody else?
So with
Well,
that,
it
they
can't be me. I already represent another organization, so at least.
That's right, because you are on the board, but you represent VRSD on that board.
So how about if we simplify things, that there is some question in whether or not we even have a seat at the table. Is that correct?
So what it is
Actually,
that
we definitely can. If we pass this resolution, we'll bring it before the council on February 5th.
So it's like the
Yeah, it's
reverse.
just a formality of.
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps we can then appoint a board member at that time.
So would you rather just bring it back as a consideration?
I mean, the board can do what it wants, but I see no need to do that. I mean, somebody's going to, we'll assume that the council will approve membership and somebody will be appointed, so it meets, quarterly or something like that?
Every other month.
Every other month, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Third Thursday.
It's not a lot of heavy lifting. It's 10:15 in the afternoon on a Thursday, which might be a schedule problem for some folks, but.
I'd like to second Councilman Hensley's self-recommendation. And so I'll second that. Let's have a vote on that, then we'll move on.
Okay, so he did withdraw.
He withdrew it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to nominate.
I don't know.
Let me nominate.
We're hearing some other things.
I appreciate Mr. Councilman Berg's, and I humbly withdraw from it. Some of the things that's been said at me in council here in public to publicly embarrass me, to get worried about their own pronouncement of punishing me. I don't think I stepped over the bounds. So take it and do whatever you want with it. I'll still attend to go.
So I think, just to clarify for the record here is that we did sanction Councilmember Hensley. We stripped him of all his committees as well as stripped him of his title. Effective, I believe it was August of this last year. August 9th. So with that, it was to recognize that that was the motion that the council took. And so we just continue with that there wouldn't be any committee assignments here. So being that he's removed himself from being nominated here, is there anyone else that wants to self-nominate or?
How about you?
That conflicts with my calendar.
So that leaves two people.
Yeah.
I'll do the alternate.
Who's retired? Who's retired on
Who's
this board?
retired that wants to start meetings at 5:30? I think you can make a 10:15 in the morning meeting. I mean, not to be rude, but.
I got it, okay.
Okay. So of those who don't have a full-time job, is there someone?
You have the alternate before you.
Yeah. Do you
I'd
want
make
to
that
do
a motion.
You want to serve?
No, that I would be the alternate and Mr. Berg would be the appointee.
Okay. Do we have that board appointment and then an alternate for that board? Do we know if there's one?
Yeah, I believe there's an alternate.
Is, yes.
Okay, all right. So that would be Berg as the board member and then Fig as the alternate. Okay. All right, so we moved through that. And a couple of other items here for city manager still is item number D, update on establishment of train quiet zones.
Yeah, just a quick update. I did provide some information probably 2 or 3 weeks ago in the city manager's report to council, but I wanted to highlight it just in case council members didn't catch it or the public is interested, and I know we have quite a few people in the public that are. So we are beginning the process of at least investigating whether a train quiet zone would work here and would be appropriate here in not only Port Hueneme but in Oxnard. We want to thank the folks at the port, Kristen and Donna, for kind of getting the ball rolling with this opportunity. And of course, they own and operate the railroad that is now experiencing significantly higher volume because of some of the expansion and new clients especially automotive clients at the port, and that is driving some of this increased train activity that is seen around town. So there is a process that involves the Federal Rail Administration, whereby a city can designate an area a quiet zone, which means that the trains don't have to blow the loud, annoying horns when they go through particular crossings. But it's a pretty long process, and certain standards have to be, or criteria have to be met. A couple specific things that have happened in the last month. December 18th, Don Villafana and I participated in a conference call that, again, the port organized. Kristen participated, Donna, 2 members of the Oxnard Public Works Department. Yes, there are still some people that work in Public Works in Oxnard. They're trying to rebuild their staff there, but I'm blanking out on the gentlemen's names right now. And then we actually had 2 representatives from the Federal Railroad Administration. So that was important to get the federal folks actually engaged in talking to us. Those Federal Railroad Administration employees will be visiting our area. It looks like the last week of this month, or maybe February 1st. We're still kind of zeroing in on a date that works for everybody. But they will be doing kind of a scoping mission, coming out looking at our Patterson crossing, our Patterson Channel Islands crossing, which some of you may have been caught in at different times of the day. The other one that is really not in Port Hueneme, but impacts Port Hueneme residents quite frequently is if you can picture the north-south rail line that goes across Port Hueneme Road east of Arcturus. I've been caught in that one a few times. So that's going to be evaluated during that same visit from the FRA staff. So the whole point of that in-person meeting is going to be, does it make sense? Do we meet the minimum criteria for establishing quiet zones? And obviously the hope is that we do, and then they will then hold our hand through the process. So the answer to that is yes, that these locations make sense for a potential quiet zone. They will hold the city's hands through the process. We would be lead on the Patterson crossing because that's within our city limits. Oxnard would need to be lead on the crossing that's in their city limits. But we're hopeful that we may be able to move forward on this and actually get quiet zone designation, which will probably require some safety improvements at those crossings to qualify for the quiet zone. But it's at least gives us some hope that there may be some relief for the residents. That I know I've received a number of complaints about the horns over the last 3 to 4 months especially, and I know council members have heard the same feedback. So again, I wish I could say that it's a quick and simple process. It's not. We know several city employees that have worked in other cities and have worked on quiet zone designations, but it is possible given some time and some persistence. So we'll update the council and the community after that meeting, which again, right now it looks like it's going to be the last week of this month.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
What does a quiet zone mean? No horns at all?
Yeah, my understanding is that, in exchange for doing some safety-related improvements at these crossings, it relieves the railroad operator of having to sound the horn going through that crossing. So it can bring a significant improvement.
So the interesting thing is the reason why I had the city manager put this on the agenda so we can talk about it is that we've seen postings on Nextdoor, about what's going on with the horns. I know there have been days where the horn just doesn't sound 1, 2, and then a long blast. It is ongoing. I mean, I can hear it, and I'm not so sure if it's the Arcturus crossing or I'm hearing an echo from the main railway system going through Oxnard, and it's just, echoing this way. So, and it's bouncing off, reverberating off the ocean or something. And so I've heard it many, many, many times and throughout the day, not just really when there would be like a train coming through and picking people up. So with the posting of an informational flyer on Nextdoor directly by the port, with their PR and us not maybe having some of that documentation. I just wanted our city manager to bring it up and address it here, and if we had any questions, at least it would give us an opportunity to talk about this. So, yes, Councilmember.
Madam Mayor, two things is that I think a lot of the sound is also attributed to the staging activities on the Navy base itself. And part of the problem is that they don't have safety crossings like we do at Channel Islands and Patterson, okay? So we may fix that particular intersection, but doesn't fix the problem. And so will this effort take into account federal land and, you know, see what the Navy can do to, oh, I'm seeing head shake here.
I'm very cynical about the opportunity for that to happen.
Well, maybe I'm just giving that as a disclosure to folks. That
I'll be the optimistic guy. I can tell you that Kristen is already in a dialogue, Kristen and Donna, with Captain Yankee and others at the base to see if that issue, which you're right, is a significant one and is distinct from the crossing, the city crossings, can somehow be dealt with.
Well, there's another approach too, and that's to talk to Kristen and the Harbor District, since they own the railroad that leads to the Navy base, that maybe they can have some influence on the times of day, days of week, when in which crossings can occur and staging occurs on the Navy base. I mean, there's another way to skin this cat.
You know, it sounds like, aren't you on the committee here for city
on the port?
We can go after
Right?
them at our city port meetings. However,
Put it on the
the
agenda.
railway on the Navy base is federal.
Oh, I understand, but they have to get to the Navy base. And if we can regulate the flow into the Navy base.
It could be something that you put on the agenda or at least consider, huh? Yeah, yeah. And
Perhaps it's a time for another meeting with the district, and we
right.
can raise that issue. In fact, I think it is timely because don't we have another increment of community enhancement funds that need to be dealt with?
Actually, that'll be on the council's February 5th agenda because the OHD board voted on the recommendations that we made at that December 11th meeting. Did not make any changes. Everything went smoothly. But the council still needs to ratify that. So that'll be back in front of you. I think February 5th, we should be ready to go.
February, yeah.
Then perhaps you could just simply make a call to Kristen and relay to her some of our thinking.
Yeah, Councilmember Henson.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we're getting close to that end of it. I hope this is an appropriate time. Mr. Butler, could we have a quick report? Are we live streaming now? How is our data coming off so people can watch at home immediately, possibly, or at least by the next day? Is that getting well ironed out, and where are we sitting, sir?
Yeah, we're still relying primarily on YouTube, the new YouTube approach, which is, it's, giving people access consistently. And then Michelle and a whole team of city staff have been evaluating higher level streaming services and hosting services than the company we've been using, with the goal of very soon, I think, having some recommendations on, which service would be best for us that would solve that longer term problem of consistent, steady streaming access, being able to possibly even to pinpoint the point in the meeting that you want to watch, the item that you want to see the discussion of without having to watch the whole meeting, those kinds of services. But in the meantime, YouTube is doing well for us.
And my second question, we had talked about this starting last year or before, of using a system somewhat like Skype when one of our members is away, which happens occasionally, and going by the audio doesn't work too well. And Skype is a fairly easy thing to implement. So are we incorporating the concept of Skyping when needed? Or if we have it on consultant that we can't have him come here, that we can teleconference right here for the audience also?
So can we move on with because we still have a couple of items, and I
just got a question while I got Mr. Butler here and available, and I'm on
this TV, and then you can have it after
But
that.
but I just want to make sure we follow the agenda as that's not noticed.
Okay.
Right, so.
Go ahead, whatever.
Thank you. We'll address that upcoming here. So, thank you for the report on quiet zones. Is there anything else for that item? All right, moving on then to item number E, the Ashcar project update.
Yeah, so the mayor asked me to provide a quick update on the project, which we just call our shorthand names, the Ashcar project, related, of course, to John Ashcar, the developer. This is the project that you've probably seen activity, a lot of earth-moving equipment, east side of Victoria, and I always forget the street. It's not Hemlock, right? South of Hemlock, but north of Channel Islands, south of Hemlock, kind of one of the last undeveloped parcels in the city limits of Port Hueneme. So the activity you've seen currently is just the kind of the earth moving, grading. That's been moving forward pretty aggressively over the last 6 weeks. The project consists of 112 apartments, so it's a rental property, including 4 live-work units, and approximately 20,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor, on a total lot that's just under 4.5 acres. So the grading's underway. The building plans have been through the first round of review by our plan check company, and they've been returned to the applicant. Mr. Ashcar and his team have not returned those plans to us after that first review yet, so we're awaiting his resubmittal of those plans with the necessary corrections made. We know that Mr. Ashcar has been working hard on locating that commercial tenant. It could be either one big tenant that takes most of that 20,000 square feet of space, or it could be a series of smaller, break up the 20,000 into smaller chunks and have some multiple tenants there. I know his desire all along has been to get a grocery tenant in that space, and he's had some struggles with that just because of the whole, you got close by supermarkets, and you've got a lot of change going on right now, a lot of new players in the grocery market in California, some people are going out of the market, and that's proven to be a challenge to him so far. But I think that would still be his first choice, and we're working with him on trying to provide any other, whether it's grocery or other options that might fill that space, because that'd be nice to get that space filled as part of the overall project. I think that is pretty much it. We're hoping, of course, that he moves forward on getting his plans submitted back to us for the actual building, and that he moves forward on the construction of the building itself. But we're encouraged by the fact that he met his Coastal Commission deadline and got that grading going on time. And we think it'll be a really good addition to Port Hueneme, and hopefully provide some residents that will shop there along the Channel Islands corridor and bring some, obviously some property tax to a lot that is undeveloped right now. So it could be a revenue generator for us, as well as being a nice improvement. So that's the update now.
Thank you. One of the things that I had mentioned to city manager with our previous city manager and previous community development director is to actually have a sign out there that announces, this is what's coming. The project is really a fabulous looking project, and so as soon as we get some other things moving on here, that it would be something that would be on display for people to really feel proud that we're doing something positive in the community, and it's a great project that John and his team have designed. So with that, any questions? Any other questions? All right. So now we move on to council member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items, number 13. So Councilmember Hensley, continuing on with the questions that you were asking our city manager, do you want to interject?
No, you already heard it, so that's enough. Thanks so much.
Okay,
No
perfect.
comment.
Okay. Anyone else on any other reports? Councilmember Sharkey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple items here. We've heard some noises from the federal government about enforcing cannabis laws. And I know some of the cities in the northern part of the state, I believe Sacramento, have passed resolutions that stated they would not approve the expenditure of any city resources to aid in federal enforcement against their local licensees. I don't know, their attorney's looking rather askance at that notion, but I would like to see us consider such a resolution here. We're getting very serious about licensing cannabis businesses in this city, and I think we ought to express support for them as much as we can without getting too far afoul of the federal government, but we ought not to be expending any city revenue, any city resources in enforcement actions against our own licensees that are trying to do business in our city. So I'd like to see if we can do something along those lines, council willing. Furthermore, I've had some correspondence with the Julia Brownlee's legislative director. There is a Water Resources Development Act in process, which is important for anybody dealing with the Corps of Engineers. And also there is an attempt to take the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund off budget. And why that's important for us is if that were a standalone fund, we had a situation such as we had with shortfalls in the Corps of Engineers budget that conceivably could be accessed to enhance the Channel Islands dredging project. And I talked with the city manager about having a letter of support go out to the appropriate committees, expressing our support for that effort. And then finally, the Tolan Road landfill and the fire experienced something between $2 and $3 million in damage. The scales were damaged, were burned and damaged. A lot of the gas collection system, plastic pipes melted. Dealing with insurance and possible federal reimbursement. But that's been the designated landfill for receiving debris from the fire. Non-toxic debris. The feds and the State Department of DTSC has been going around to any burned properties and collecting the hazardous waste, the asbestos and stuff, and they're trucking that off. But anything left gets bundled in these big plastic bales, and it's been brought to the landfill. We've got 3 temporary scales up there to handle this. And they are collecting tipping fees on this, so that it is business, and the tonnage limits have been waived for the duration. So it's an important, once again, this important public asset is showing its value to the community.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fick.
Councilman Sharkey, what impact does this have on the remaining capacity of the landfill? Do we get an exception on that somehow, or compensation?
Well, when we're looking at 30-year life of the landfill, this is a blip. There were days when we were under tonnage. The issue with capacity on the landfill is not so much the physical capacity as the permitted capacity, and that's what we're looking at this year, because the calendar is running out, but there's still plenty of room, and we seem to have a more receptive board of supervisors than we've had in the past on moving this forward. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to finish that process this year, and that that landfill will service into probably past 2030 or so.
Is there any possibility that the sanitation district can reap some of the federal emergency relief funds to compensate for the added cost of handling this tonnage?
Well, we're looking at all those things. We have 3 different insurance companies that handle different aspects of, with the computers in the office burned and things like that. And that's one insurance company. And then, fortunately, the rolling stock was all moved to the center of the landfill, and the vegetation on the side of the hill burned, but down where the rolling stock was, that was protected. That didn't burn. The rain could have been really serious, but in that little canyon there was sort of a microclimate, and it rained all around, but it was not a great deal of problem with erosion and runoff on the landfill site itself. So,
great.
Yeah, it's an adventure.
Okay, I do have a request for an agenda item as soon as it can be arranged. I know that our staff is anxious to hit the, what you call it, the Sawdust Trail.
Sawdust Trail.
To try to educate the public in advance of any kind of tax measure being crafted and put on the ballot for November. November's not that far away. And we had identified about a dozen different avenues, both non-voter required as well as voter required. And some of those alternatives are going to require a bit of study. And I hate to see us get too far out there. As I understand it, the presentations that are being planned could take us well into May and beyond. And that would leave us with no time whatsoever to really entertain a whole lot of range of options. And so I would, with the council's consent, I'd like to bring this back to this body to review those measures that have already been identified and were adopted as part of the strategic action plan, and to do that before you get out there in front of the council. So that would be my request if the council is agreeable.
So the thing of it is here is that it is a process that was identified basically working through our consultants, two of them. And so with that, it was an appointment of an ad hoc committee, and that committee comprises me as the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Berg. And because we work just 2 out of the 5, it's not a Brown Act, violation, and so we have to keep it as an ad hoc committee. I would say that as we started this process, we need to continue that process that was identified by our consultants and working through and staging these meetings that both the city manager and our chief of police are, doing a tag team, and then it'll be Will and I coming alongside that as well, that we have to actually work through the process itself. I would believe it's too premature to come back here because we do need to get out into the community. And so my recommendation would be is that we don't come back to the council, that you just allow that process to follow through. And then at such time we have feedback coming back and maybe looking at the options that we do have, then that's really when it comes back for a decision.
I had a discussion with the city manager earlier today, and part of this community outreach is going to want to visit just some of the points that you've brought up. But we want it to come from the community rather than coming from us.
Yeah, my problem, Mayor Pro Tem, is that some of these other alternatives are going to take a bit of time.
That's right.
Analysis.
I agree.
And I don't think that we're going to be in a position, if this process runs its course, that we're going to be able to entertain those other options. And so I would make that as a recommendation. If somebody would care to second it, and let's have a vote.
So
my
yes,
recommendation is that this be brought back to the council at the earliest possible date in advance of any outreach that occurs, so that we have an opportunity to vet the process.
I'd like to hear from staff where we are in the process. I mean, as I understand it, we're not polling about alternatives at this point. We're still gathering data.
Yeah, a couple things that may address some of Mr. Figg's concerns. These meetings, these presentations that we're scheduling now, in fact, we're actually being forbidden to talk about specific tax alternatives, and certainly not pushing a particular type of tax.
Okay, Mr. Butler, let me direct your attention to what you have distributed to the City Council and take a look at the material. You'll find that a sales tax measure is specifically mentioned no, I'm sorry. That's where I'm concerned. I hear one thing that, no, we haven't really set a course. We haven't unilaterally made a decision internally, whether it's, a client control issue by your consultant, or if it's staff desiring to take a certain path on its own. And so that's my concern, and I think the council needs to vet those issues, because up to this point, I don't think they've been truly embraced in this process. Now, I may be wrong. That's why I'm making the motion. And if the council wants to say, just move forward, do your thing, so be it.
Let's allow the staff to continue on with what they were explaining here. So
yeah. So, and it's true that there's a mention, because it was one of the questions that was asked in the survey, and so we're reporting on the results of the survey, but we're not there to push that option or any other tax option. The other thing that may ease your mind a little bit is that we will be working, certainly during this January through May period, on looking at a whole range of different revenue options to make sure that we have the information ready to go for the council when the council has to make a decision on whether to move forward with any kind of a ballot measure or not. So we will not just be sitting around until May or June doing nothing but community outreach. We will be looking at the whole range of options. You provided that list to us that we've looked at a couple times at the council level. Like you said, some don't require voter approval, some do. And there may be things, for example, the rental inspection program, which I think is one of those non-voter approved options, that could conceivably come before the council way before May for action and follow-up, because it's kind of a targeted, specific program that does benefit the general fund with some revenue. We can quibble about, how much we would actually get based on the number of units that we have, but I think it's worth looking into. The whole parking fees at the beach option, which I think is on that list as a non-voter approved option, that may very well come forward. I'd like to bring it forward before we get into the summer season, and that's potentially a general fund benefit. So there will be some things that you will see probably even prior to May that are targeted, specific general fund revenue options, and we may be working on the analysis for larger, bigger scope general fund revenue options, but we don't want to slow down or get off track on these community outreach meetings between now and whether it's April or May, because the primary goal of those meetings is to get community feedback on the priorities that people have for services, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. That feedback is going to be really important for the council to have as you make your decision when we get into
I thought we already did that by way of the survey that was conducted earlier.
That's a big part of it. That's a big part of it.
Okay, I'm going to ask, Madam Mayor, I've made a motion, and if nobody wishes to second it, it'll die, and it'll be done. But I feel the necessity for this body as a whole to vet out these options.
So I think what you've heard is that we did engage the consultants, and we are going through this process, and we are needing to get feedback from the community before we then, propose anything. And so I'm asking that you allow that process to continue the way it had been crafted and designed as consultants.
Can you ask for a second to my motion? If it dies, it dies.
All right, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Fair enough. I made the effort.
Thank you. Okay. So did you have anything for the... Mr. City Manager, did you have anything else to add to that?
Nothing else, Mayor.
Okay, great. All right, so I just have a couple of things to report on the Ventura County Council of Governments. We met last week, and Bob Huber, Mayor of Simi Valley, was appointed the chair, and then Jan McDonald from City of Camarillo appointed the vice chair. They reported on a couple of things. We had a report from the Ventura County Fire Chief, Lorenzen, and Dustin Gardner, who was the incident chief responding to the Thomas fire. You know, we've all seen reports about this in the local papers and the media and all. And in total, there were over 8,000 boots on the ground with this, with trying to put the fire out. It looks like about 1/5 of it occurred in Santa Barbara County, 4/5 of it occurred in Ventura County, and most of it occurred, you know, as you've seen within Ojai Valley, the Los Padres forest area, and Ventura, Santa Paula. It's pretty astonishing when you go driving up the 150 or, you know, even up the 101 as far as you can make it, just how much land was burned there. And so he was talking about just how they responded to the incidents. They were trying to get ahead of it. At one point, you know, when they were comparing the fires of Northern California, that burned over a course of 8 weeks. What burned in our area was over a course of 8 days versus what burned up there in 8 weeks. So it was a fast-moving fire. They did a great job in moving people, equipment, etc., in order to help protect families and residents and everything else. Farmers were affected as well. And they're then looking at where do we go from here. So the first thing they said is make sure that you have plans in place for, you know, are you prepared and ready to evacuate? And, you know, that's where the Listos program comes in, and that's where the police department and our, you know, incident team here comes in. But on a larger scale, they're kind of taking a look at what happens then with the land. What we saw in Montecito, and they reported on that too, is that when the fire burns everything, and it's actually burned down to the mineral rock, it's actually taken up dirt as well, the fire. It's burned that hot that when you have it burned that hot, then the land actually crystallizes and it's like sheets of glass. And so when rain hits it, they just slide right off, and that was the reason why Montecito had such a bad incident, is that the ground did not absorb anything because of the crystallization of it all. So that was a good report at VCOG. They also drafted these 2 pages, and I'll share this with the city manager, who can then share with everyone else. The city policies regarding marijuana, both adult use and medical marijuana. And all the cities are cultivation, commerce, commercial. All the cities are prohibited except allowed by permit here in Port Hueneme. So I just want to, you know, this is a nice recap for everybody that we could use. And then I attended the city selection committee, which you'll attend when you're mayor next year. All the mayors of the cities get together and we appoint people to different boards. And so it includes even the LAFCO, and that was an appointment by Carmen Ramirez from Oxnard. There's a new Ventura County Oversight Board, and that is going to be Jan McDonald, who represents the cities. So I'll leave my comments there. Yeah. All right. So continuation of open forum. Do we have any new speaker cards for that? It's item number 14. Anybody who wishes to speak to the council on any matters not on the agenda may do so at this time. Okay, seeing none, then we move on to closed session if we have anything that continues on from this earlier afternoon's meeting. Nothing, not tonight. Okay. So with that, then, we adjourn to the next regular meeting to be held February 5th, 2017, here in council chambers at 6:30. Hold on. Mr. Hensley, before we go, we actually have spa. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. I thought you were heading out. I want to call then to order the Surplus Property Authority, which we haven't done the agenda on yet, right? So for January 16, 2018. We have a roll call. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Figg.
Here.
Commissioner Hensley.
Here.
Commissioner Sharkey.
Present.
Vice President Berg.
Here.
President Schnapp.
Here. We have an agenda before us.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right. So agenda carries. Then we have consent agenda, item number 3.
Move to approve.
Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No opposition. We move on consent agenda and then open forum. Anyone wishing to speak on the SPA board on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. Seeing none, and we do not have a closed session for that committee. So then we adjourn to the regular meeting of Surplus Property Authority to be held April 2nd, 2018 here at Council Chambers at 6:30. Thank you.